Alrighty, guys, you voted between, frankly, I think a bit of a hard choice. It was the Destiny and Tim Pool debate versus. I'm curious about the Ethan and this guy, conversation, but I came on stream and I saw that this was at release and everybody voted for this, and I was like, yeah, I agree. This looks a little more interesting. Can never escape Destiny. He's always having interesting conversations that I definitely always appreciate watching, and they talk about Donald Trump's indictment, which is something that I'm very curious about. So let's have a little more of an educational day. I'm going to skip the little intro that Tim Pool has. I'm going to go kind of right to the first segment here, which is Donald Trump has been indicted.
Former president to be indicted. The grand jury's vote regards an alleged settlement made with adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the former president's 2016 campaign. According to 5 people with knowledge of the matter per the New York Times, Trump and Daniels allegedly had a sexual encounter in 2006, according to the claim.
I thought, and I could be wrong because we're going to educate ourselves here, I thought this had to do with him taking a bunch of files and then being asked to give it back for 3 months and then him just not doing it and lying to his own attorney about it. Does it have to actually have something to do with Stormy Daniels? I guess so.
Trump is the first former president to face criminal charges after office. While the specific charges are currently unknown, an indictment is expected to be announced as Trump will be asked to surrender and face arraignment. A lawyer for the former president confirmed his indictment shortly after the initial announcement, the AP reported. In a March 18th Truth Social post, Trump said he would be arrested on the 21st and called for people to protest and take our nation back. Okay, so basically after that, they postponed the indictment. Things get delayed. Then a bunch of people who are, conservative but not pro-Trump started saying Trump's grifting, he's lying, it's not going to happen. Then today they announced, the grand jury was going to be suspended for a month. And then all of a sudden, just a couple hours ago, they announced they voted to indict Donald Trump. So obviously, my opinion on this, as we've talked about it before, is this is silly and stupid. But while we have you, man, what do you think?
If he committed a crime, I think he should have the book thrown at him. I think generally this is a misdemeanor crime. Fair. Usually there's a statute of limitations. But if records were falsified in an attempt to cover up another crime, then the statute of limitations is extended. But I don't think any of us have seen the indictment yet. So I wait till they unseal the indictment to see how silly or stupid I think it is. But hey, if he broke the law, I think he should have the book thrown at him. Even ex-presidents I don't believe are above the law. So
I absolutely agree.
Throw a heavy book at him too, because sometimes people throw those children's books at you. It doesn't really hurt.
I'd like to see more presidents get arrested and charged.
Oh man, make me nervous, guys. It's the first time in history a president's ever been indicted.
No, I agree. I don't care. If they break the law, then they should be charged.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting, though, because, obviously presidents seem to be treated above the law. And it is interesting that it's Donald Trump, of all people that it could have been, especially if this is apparently a misdemeanor. But if, like Destiny said, maybe there's something greater to it. Maybe there's a real reason. I do wonder if a little bit of this is just kind of a slight distaste for Donald Trump, though. I just wonder.
My issue, I suppose, is it seems overtly political. I mean,
yeah,
how can we say that without saying the indictment?
That's a fair point.
But you just said that.
I said it seems overtly political. It's fair to say.
Well, I kind of agree. It seems like I wouldn't say it seems like it is. I'd say it might be. It feels like it might be. As not great as Trump ended up being, especially riling up people for January 6th. I do think that this is a person who went from getting really positive media coverage, even if that media coverage was just bullshit, vlogging or not vlogging, you know what I mean, little tabloids, to being completely dismantled. And even if he always given the worst faith interpretation of everything he said, right? I'm not saying that he's a great guy. And so now he's getting pulled on what Destiny said was a misdemeanor. And it's you would expect somebody to kind of, I guess, get away with that. Most presidents probably do in some capacity. Although I don't know how many presidents have committed a crime, so maybe I'm wrong. But I could see there being some political influence here, even if it's a justifiable reason to go after him. So
we don't know for sure, but it seems that way, especially considering the dude campaigned on investigating Trump. They spent years, and this was the best they could come up with, that Cohen paid Stormy Daniels to not write a book or give an interview or whatever about banging Trump. And that Trump tried claiming it was legal fees, despite the fact that a letter was put out 2018 where Cohen's lawyer said Cohen paid for it out of pocket, was never reimbursed. So, I mean, that feels kind of like exculpatory evidence outright, which makes this seem political.
So do you think that the payments to him that were recorded in the book, do you think that's all fake, or?
So I don't know. Well, definitely, I'm interested in seeing what the reason.
I just don't understand because the thing that drives me the craziest, it happens to the Andrew Tate stuff too, where things will come out and people immediately say this is political, it's partisan. It's why not just wait till the indictments come out and then we can actually see when the indictments come out? It might be that there's a lot of stuff in there. It's oh, okay, that's fair, and it might be wow, this is BS. It's obviously
because
political.
Bragg campaigned on doing this.
Sure, but I mean, people can campaign on all sorts of things, right? Giuliani campaigned on cleaning up New York. The guy that
That literally makes it political.
If you campaign.
I think the biggest issue, and probably what Destiny's worried about too, is that I think there's a difference between saying like this might be political, which is like for my thing, it's like I could see the potential motivation versus signaling to your audience that it is. I'm not saying Tim Pool's doing that, but maybe the way he's speaking is a little too roundabout and not firm enough of being like, I wonder what's going on. Let's see what happens. Maybe that's like the biggest worry, which I get that, because you don't want to think everything is like this massive conspiracy theory on everything. That just kind of generates a little bit of mistrust in our government.
On like enforcing laws, like is that a political?
No, he
statement?
campaigned on investigating Trump.
Maybe he thought Trump broke some laws.
But it's like,
it seems like a fair thing to campaign on.
Show me the man, I'll show you the law that he broke. Right.
Well, we're about to see that show once the indictments are unsealed. Huh?
So here's what I think with the potential of this case. You have a lawyer? I imagine you've gone through legal stuff, right?
Not like a dedicated one, but I've a couple depending on what I'm going through. Yeah.
Do you go through their itemized invoices? You might. I mean, I don't know if you do or not.
I've never made a single payment of over $10,000 to a lawyer. So usually they send me the itemized thing, and they bill by every 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
These bills that Trump's paying are over hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think for Cohen, wasn't it like $330,000 or something at the end of the day?
Something like that. And so, I really doubt Trump was handed this invoice, looked at it and said, no, we can't say we paid Stormy. That's illegal. Let's falsify this record. He probably got a legal bill and was like, just pay him. I don't know, whatever. Right?
Didn't Cohen claim that he and Trump had personal conversations about this particular issue?
Yes, after the fact. But in 2018, Cohen's lawyer claimed Cohen paid for it personally without instruction from Trump and was never reimbursed for it.
Sure. Do you think has Cohen claimed otherwise though?
After the fact, yes, Cohen has claimed otherwise.
So, and those claims were under oath, correct?
Then he should be charged with perjury if that's the case.
But the statements by his boss, were those statements under oath?
His boss?
Yeah, or the other lawyer. Yeah, the other lawyer. Were those under oath?
I don't know who the letter was filed with.
Something that Rosenstein said that I think was really important when he was asked for questioning, this was like 3 or 4 years ago, I think, is he would get very irritated when he was brought before Congress and claims of the media, I think Jim Jordan did this to him, the claims in the media would be brought before him and they'd say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And he said, well, I don't think that's true. And he's like, do you think they're lying? And something Rosenstein said was, well, if you think they're lying, bring them and have them testify under oath. So I think it's important when we look at people's statements. People say a lot of things. We saw this with Giuliani and his claims about Trump. People say a lot of things, and then when they're under oath, their stories change significantly. So I'd always be cautious to compare statements made under oath to something that some guy might have just said in a letter or said to the press or said to a friend.
Who's Rosenstein?
I think this was sent to the Federal Election Commission.
Hey, sounds like Kanye's biggest enemy. Wink, wink, and nod, nod, if you know what I'm saying, dude. He probably made some good Hollywood film. This is a joke. All right, guys, I'm joking. Don't ban my channel again. Please, guys.
Maybe, yeah.
That's what it says. Via email, Federal Election Commission, Office of Complaints, Examination, and Legal Administration. Attention, Crystal Dennis. And the letter says that Cohen did it of his own volition. He paid for it out of pocket. He was never reimbursed. So I would put it this way. It seems political when you have a letter like this from 5 years ago. But again, fair point.
Yeah, he keeps saying it seems political rather than saying like it might be political. He's saying it seems political. He's saying it without saying it, that like, yeah, it's probably a political and probably a bunch of nothing. It's a dismissal rather than just being like, there's one, and which I think I'm operating if it's a little bit of skepticism, and I think Tim Pool's operating as if it's already it is, you know. He's being a little bit too forthright on his statement, you know.
We'll see what happens. My issue with it, for the most part, is
Kanye watched 21 Jump Street. Now he's not anti-Semitic anymore. My bad. I'm sorry, guys. Let me apologize to Kanye West. My bust.
Falsified record misdemeanor charge. You want to get into the debate about Barack Obama blowing up a kid? Because I would absolutely love to talk about that.
A kid.
Look, if they want to give Trump a misdemeanor charge and lock him up for however many months a misdemeanor gets him, I would absolutely be willing to make that to agree. You're right. He's got to be charged. Next up, Obama. He blew up a kid. He blew up a bunch of kids.
I don't know if Obama broke a law.
I don't think Americans of any capacity are allowed to kill other Americans.
Of any capacity? Don't cops do it all the time?
Not like.
I mean, it seems like they in the service of doing.
That's a little bit of a semantic trick you played there, right?
Okay.
Obviously, you can kill people in self-defense, but Obama bombed a civilian restaurant in Yemen, a country we're not at war with, killing civilians, including a 16-year-old American citizen. Like, you can't, if you're in the military, you can't just, or a cop, you can't just go and kill somebody.
Murder. You can't murder.
Yeah, but I imagine the justification Obama would use was that this was in defense of U.S. interests or defense of the United States. And in his role as commander-in-chief, the president of the United States has offered wide deference from the Supreme Court for taking actions in the commission of protecting the United States, even if we disagree with them.
Yeah, I think that's criminal. I mean,
but that's fine. But there's a different question of like, is it illegal versus do you think it's criminal, like bad, right? It's probably bad, I guess, but like.
So the Obama administration's argument.
He guesses. That sounds horrible. I don't know the specifics of Yemen, but I understand what Destiny is saying. That this might have been within his reach, even if it maybe shouldn't be, you know? That's a whole different conversation.
It was that they were trying to target a terrorist leader. But I'm not. I mean, you make a fair point, but I'd be willing to argue that the president does not have the authority to bomb countries we are not at war with.
Well, what about when Trump assassinated Soleimani? That was an assassination.
Where was that taking place in?
In Iraq.
In Iraq,
yeah.
A country we have an AUMF over. an authorization for use of military force.
I don't think the authorization for use of military force. I'm pretty sure we were on good terms with Iraq at that point. I don't know if we had the ability to do whatever we wanted in that country. That was a political assassination, though. But there are executive orders that are against the United States.
I don't disagree.
Sure, I'm just saying.
Well, then you could argue that the civilians didn't die. What's interesting is that Tim's very worried about the 16-year-old American civilian that died in Yemen, which makes sense, but not the other civilians. Why not the other ones as well? Right?
I'm just saying that in general, there's multiple questions going on here. We can say, do we think it's wrong or bad? Probably. I think generally the United States president killing American citizens is generally a bad thing, unless there's really good justification for it. But there's a difference between that versus is it illegal? And I think that the law tends to, we argued about this a little bit before the show, when Trump was doing things at the border that we thought, when I say we progressives and the left got really mad at, the Supreme Court tended to side with him because the president is given wide deference over matters of
what was he doing on
national
the border?
security. I think it was when he was using, he couldn't get the funding for the border wall. No. It was over banning certain people coming into the country. When he named there were 7 Muslim majority countries, and when he was running for president, even Giuliani said he's trying to find ways to do a Muslim majority ban. Technically, he's not allowed to do that.
Venezuela, North Korea were on that list, though.
Yeah, well, he changed it up, I think, after the first one didn't go through for whatever reason. But once he did that ban, when people tried to challenge it, the Supreme Court basically said, president, border, he can do almost anything he wants because it's the president.
Yeah,
of the
but that's
border.
not blowing up a kid.
I didn't say it was blowing up a kid, but I'm just saying that in general, you would think that when we're talking border, if we're talking about passing policy at the border, that seems like a congressional thing. We should be passing laws about immigration policy, but the president can do that basically all on his own because the Supreme Court's like, hey, he's a president, national security, he can do almost whatever he wants.
I think I see the disconnect. I'm less concerned with legality.
Okay, I'm only talking legalities.
Right. So I think that a president who bombs a country we're not at war with should be stripped of his power and criminally charged for killing an American citizen. And it should be literally under the U.S. murder statutes that are covered by multiple state and federal laws. I don't look at it like, Is a murder statute, could I, in Tennessee, get arrested if I bomb somebody in Yemen? Is that I don't know what the... I mean, that's a good point. You might, yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, that might be way worse than murder. It might be terroristic, international. I'm pretty sure if you, as an American citizen, set off a bomb in a foreign country, you'd be criminally charged in the U.S.
But I don't know if it'd be under state statutes, right? That sounds like some
federal.
International, federal, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Julian Assange is being criminally charged in the U.S., even though he's not a U.S. citizen who didn't do anything in the United States. Kim.com for that matter too. I mean, the dude's was never in this country, and they went after him. So
I just think that I think it's really important that we separate conversations of what should somebody be charged with versus what do we think is wrong. And I think both conversations are important. We can talk about is this wrong or is it not wrong? And there's probably a good conversation to be had there. But there's a difference between that versus somebody needs to be charged here. It's well, charged with what? Is there actually a crime broken, or is it just we're really upset about this particular thing, which is fair?
Yeah, I think the Patriot Act's insane, and the National Defense Authorization Act insane. It gives them it really gives the president the authority to bomb an American citizen anywhere in the United States.
It doesn't. It gives them the right to rendition anyone anywhere in the world and then hold secret tribunals. And I think that's wrong. And I think if we're going to just play the question of is it legal, well, then there's a whole lot of really awful stuff the government's going to end up doing if we just say, well, they made it legal so they can do it. But but
this is what I always fight against, when it comes to BLM and everything too. It's important to change the laws. If we want people to be held accountable, we have to change the laws to reflect what we think our moral will is so that we can actually get people to be held accountable. Because otherwise you just get a bunch of people that are like, this is wrong, do something. It's like, okay, well, I don't know what you want us to do. It's not illegal. We can't do anything about it.
If we changed the law and it made it illegal to bomb kids in Yemen, then we wouldn't be able to charge people that were doing it while it was legal because it was legal when they did it.
Yeah, probably. But I mean, do we want to make it so that when we change laws, we can retroactively?
No,
right?
I don't. Anyway.
I don't think we're ever officially at war with Syria, right?
No.
But Trump bombed the airport. Is that but again, he's the president. It's our military.
I guess the other question is, in talking about Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, he wasn't the intended target. The intended target was somebody else. And he had just a few weeks prior killed Anwar al-Awlaki, Abdulrahman's dad. So he kills this guy who's an American citizen, then argues, well, look, he was a jihadi. He was preaching against the United States. He had to be stopped. But then a few weeks later, he targets a civilian restaurant in Yemen, blows up this restaurant with a drone strike, killing Anwar al-Awlaki's son, Abdulrahman. And the response was, well, we were targeting a terror leader, so it's okay. So I guess the question is, I'm curious as to the legalities and the moral standing of, one, does the...
obviously, I'm a little bit uneducated on everything going on in Yemen. I struggle when it comes to world affairs and out of the United States issues. Not that I'm super educated on everything, but I'm trying to see what was the specific reason why we dropped bombs in Yemen. It seems like we thought that there was terrorist groups there, and we unintentionally killed civilians. I mean, that's horrible. But yeah, I mean, damn, dropped a lot of bombs, bro. It's 26,000 fucking bombs in multiple different countries. Jesus Christ. 26,171. Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya. What's interesting is he dropped it in so many countries: Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. And I imagine it had something to do with some kind of terrorist organizations. And it's just interesting that Tim Pool only cares about Yemen and the one American citizen that died there. What about all the others innocent civilians that died? Why not care about them as well? 24,287 bombs were used in Iraq and Syria, where the U.S. Is helping drive ISIS militants from it. Okay, it sounds like they're trying to target terrorist organizations, and unfortunately, civilians died. It's probably one of those decisions where you're just never going to win, whether you say yes or no to like bombing the area. No. I have to say it's refreshing to spend some time with somebody who's rational and normal in a good way, as you, Papa God. I found you, and I'm glad I found your channel. Yeah, thank you. I'm probably the least normal person I know, but on the internet, I'm the most normal person in the world.
President have the legal authority to kill anyone in any country at any time in the eyes of the United States. If he does and hits the wrong target and kills an innocent American citizen, is there a manslaughter similar charge for this kind of conflict?
I think internationally, unfortunately, I think we just don't tend to hold countries responsible. This has happened multiple times. I'll avoid the USS Liberty example because that's a whole loaded thing. But there was, let's see, I think Iran, after we killed Soleimani, in the night or the night after that followed, Iran accidentally shot down, I think, one of their own civilian airliners. And there were no charges. Nothing was held for that. I believe...
In Iran?
In Iran, yeah.
And they're like authoritarian, though, you know?
True. No, I'm just saying, but internationally, I believe it happened over Ukraine as well. I think that there was a missile launched from Crimea, I believe. It was probably with the assistance of Russian troops. There was a civilian airliner shot down there. But nothing happened. The United States, I believe, I think we shot down a civilian plane that killed like over 150 or over 200 people. That might have been south of Iran, I think, flying towards Saudi Arabia maybe, and we didn't do anything about that. We said sorry, but I think that was like 200 or so something said. I mean, it happens, it sucks, but I mean, precedent internationally is that like sometimes mistakes happen, countries do mistakes, they're bad, and you pay money sometimes, but there's usually not like criminal courts for those types of mistakes. If it was proven, then yeah, of course, we say, yeah. But
the best I could do on short notice, the ACLU wrote an article saying that it was unlawful.
Well, if the ACLU said it.
No, I mean, yeah, it's
when they said which was unlawful.
Not just the killing of Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, but the other civilians that were killed in these countries we're not at war with was. It says the killing program isn't only unlawful, it's unwise, and that's about, you know, on the short term. There have been legal arguments made that Obama.
I mean, I wonder if it actually is unlawful or if that's just flavor language for writing, because you know that's one of the things you learn in writing is to flavor up your put a little bit of a Crystal Light, Diet Crystal Light inside of your writing, you know, sometimes
does have the right to kill Americans abroad. But I kind of feel like, you know, we've got multiple amendments that afford American citizens a plethora of rights before they can just kill you. So that's where I'm at on the issue, I suppose.
Do you still have American rights when you're in another country?
You still pay taxes, so yes, you do. And the State Department will send guys to rescue you if you're kidnapped.
Maybe.
This is the first I've heard of USS Liberty that you mentioned earlier.
Oh, God, no, don't even do it.
1967, during the Israeli Six-Day War, they accidentally torpedoed or they shot down a...
Yeah, but depending on who you ask, it's not an accident. That's like a whole can of worms of weird Jewish stuff.
Let's jump to this next story. From timcast.com, quote, political persecution, election interference at the highest level in history. Trump responds to indictment, will reportedly surrender early next week. Never.
You know, I can appreciate, because I know a lot of people don't like Tim Pool, but I can appreciate that Tim Pool has like somebody like Destiny on to push him back on like anything, especially on the Trump stuff. Because, you know, he's saying some, I think that this is all political kind of a thing. And then Destiny's like, well, maybe not. And at least he's getting pushback. You know what I mean? It's one thing to just kind of say whatever you want on your show willy-nilly and have nobody that's going to give you any true pushback versus having somebody that you know is going, like, you know, Destiny's going to push back. And Tim isn't dumb. He knows too. So you can respect him for that. You know, that's how you can get even crazier. If you have somebody on your show to regulate you, that's when you can say wild shit, right? Like when I do my podcast on my new channel with my wife called Rob and Dan, I'm going to say wild shit, and I know I'm going to get pushback from my wife, guys. That's not a shameless plug. Don't look up Rob and Dan. There's one vlog out right now. Don't look that up. It's not even relevant.
Before in our nation's history has this been done. The statement from Trump, let's pull it up, let's read it. Here we go, if I can. Text is kind of small. He writes, this is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, and even before I was sworn in as your president of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of hardworking men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine. And
well, let's just be very clear about like the Mueller situation in Russia and everything. The investigation against Trump was completely valid. Okay? Let's just be very clear. It was very sussy. Even by Trump, I remember this specifically, and it came out Russia was Trump wasn't colluding with Russia. Let's just be very clear. He was innocent on the charges. But I want to explain to you why it was necessary to do the investigation. Oh, I just wheezed. Was necessary. What wasn't necessary, what wasn't good, is liberal media, progressive media especially, constantly doing like day 100 and whatever of Trump watch. He's guilty, guys, and then they looked like idiots when he wasn't. Right. That's it. The investigation, the investigation itself was fair, because there was some stuff to look into. Like I remember that Trump was talking about. Trump had ended up talking to like a what is the name of it? Like some kind of a Russian person, and originally they said it was about adoption programs in Russia, and then it turned out that it was like, you know, it was about opposition research. It was valid investigation, but the politicizing of it was not valid. That's the reality. So that's fair. It's fair enough. You know, I remember Trump being like, opposition research is not illegal. It's like, oh, you're right. But yeah, every single day, like, you know, progressives being like, it was, it's true. He did this thing when he didn't. He didn't do anything illegal. Is obviously the problem.
Impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump. But now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent who just so happens to be a president of the United States and by far the leading Republican candidate for president has never happened before ever. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, who was handpicked and funded by George Soros, is a disgrace. Rather than stopping the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults he should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg. And
you know, not for nothing, but like all the rhetoric is kind of like air at my ass at this point, because I know, because I have like a lot of conservative family, a good amount. They're like moderate conservatives. And after the whole January 6th shit, everybody was like, yeah, like we're kind of tapping out on Donald Trump here. He went too fucking crazy. You know, you can't be riling people up to be fucking overthrowing the government because you feel like you lost. They're just like, this is nuts. He took the fucking L, just take an L gracefully. But he overstepped his bounds, and now, you know, I wonder if Trump actually thinks that he was robbed the election. Like, I wonder if he actually believes it. I truly wonder.
Then we will defeat Joe Biden, and we are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again. Well, very interesting. What do you think?
They better be doing a really good job at that office. I think there's a lot of political consideration that has to go into these charges, because it's a really scary world when your criminal justice system is potentially interfering with an election, which is something that, despite what some Americans think, that's all of our intelligence agencies try really hard to avoid this exact scenario where you might be indicting or arresting or charging with crimes like somebody that could be running for president. So I hope that whatever they have, I hope when these indictments are unsealed, some really solid stuff, and it's not just a whole bunch of like, you know, Lucy whatever that ends up falling apart.
What do you think about, he mentions Ukraine. Do you remember the whole Ukraine gate fiasco impeachment? Donald Trump quid pro quo.
Yep, I do remember that. Yeah, what about it?
What are your thoughts?
Am I allowed?
Oh man, I don't remember too much of that. Fuck. All I remember, Jesus Christ, I forgot about that. All I remember is that Trump had said something in a way that felt like he was leveraging like some kind of aid money or something to Ukraine. I forgot all about that. That happened a while ago. Holy fuck.
Allowed to say the F word?
Yeah, after 15 seconds, yeah.
I mean, we try to keep it family friendly.
In the first 15 seconds, they demonetize.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm okay with that impeachment, if that's what you're asking. Yeah.
You think Trump committed a crime?
Absolutely.
You want to elaborate? I know it might be. It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
Refresh me, because it's been a while.
But my understanding was that Trump contacted Ukraine, Zelensky, and he was asking if there was wrongdoing done by, I think it was by Biden.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fuck. It was, yeah. He was leveraging something like that. He wanted him to investigate Biden because of like his Hunter or something. Because Hunter was getting money. Like Hunter was, what was he called? He was like what's the word? He was like an analyst or something. They hired him due to nepotism to be like some kind of an analyst or whatever, or like a reference. I forgot what the word is called, but it's like stuff that's like just normal. They paid him like a bunch of money, but like it was normal in the context that they were paying him. And it was just because he was a Biden and he had like a name attached to him, but it wasn't anything that was like a breach of national security. Like this shit happens all the time. I forget what the word is that what he was doing. A consultant. He was like consulting for like a company in Ukraine. Some dumb bullshit that happens all the time. And they wanted to make it into like a political thing. That's a conversation about nepotism more than it's a conversation about whether Biden did something wrong or Hunter did something wrong. It was completely like, I remember watching even Ben Shapiro talking about it when he got pushed on it by Lex Friedman, and Ben was like, Ben has been pushing the narrative that there was something going on, and then he's on with Lex, and Lex like, don't you think it's just a normal consulting salary? He's like, yeah, but you know, and then all of a sudden Ben became a reasonable person magically in the course of like a minute, you know. This is crazy.
That prosecutor, and if they had any information about potential wrongdoings that Hunter Biden or Joe Biden had been involved in Ukraine. And in exchange for that, he wanted to withhold aid that was already congressionally approved to Ukraine for that.
So what's wrong with that? Like, why is that a problem?
Why is it a problem to withhold aid from somebody, saying that you have to... Listen, okay, if you're saying, I will only give you money if you tell me like what I want to hear, that's pretty much how I'm hearing this. That's a problem. They already get the aid. You can't do a quid pro quo on that. Like, that's a problem.
Legally or morally, or
both, either, whatever you think.
Legally, I believe it's because I don't think the president has the authority to withhold that aid. I don't remember what the legal arguments for on that. For the moral part is our president probably shouldn't be asking other countries to investigate like wrongdoings of political opponents. That's a really
But Joe Biden
world.
wasn't running for office at the time.
I mean,
Who cares?
Then why was he? Hold on, I'm trying to think of the timeline for this.
Yeah, Joe Biden. It was a year before he announced. That was part of the controversy, that Joe Biden had not announced he was running for office at all.
No, but hold on. He might not have announced it, but like, I'm pretty sure most people knew he was running. Like in the early polls, like if you looked at Real Clear Progress, if you looked at a lot of the polling aggregate sites, like they were already polling Biden. He'd already been factored in quite a while. He might have announced that he was going to run for office, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people were expecting it.
I mean, that's just speculative media stuff. So Trump isn't actively investigating a political opponent, unless the argument is we all secretly knew that was going to be the case. They were like Bernie Sanders was still in the race. There were a bunch of other people at the time. The controversy was like, why Joe Biden? There were other Democrats that were actually talking about running, and it wasn't Joe Biden. He announced late.
He did announce late, but he was still factored into the polls really early because like a lot of people thought he was going to run. The question is though, is that do we want the president contacting other, even if he's not running, he's still the type of political opponent. What if the vice
president did the same thing? Is that
if the vice president was? I think that anytime you're reaching out, like let's ask, if we pull back on a macro level, why is Trump asking this information? Does he genuinely think that there's been some grave wrongdoing done by the Bidens that needs to be corrected for?
Yeah.
And if so, why isn't he asking our intelligence agencies for information about this? Why is he going to another country and asking?
I mean, we have the Five Eyes Spy Club. We do that all the time.
It's we don't do that all the time. Going to another leader and saying, "Hey, I need you to get dirt on a potential political opponent," because I think there's something.
Well, he wasn't a political opponent, and he is
a political. Even if he was the vice president of the former opposite party guy that he just as he came into office. What do you mean? He's some kind of political opponent, right? I mean, even if he wasn't directly running yet, like I would argue, if he was asking this for like AOC, for instance, I would say that it's similar.
Trump didn't go to the president of Ukraine and say, "I got this political opponent I need dirt on." He said, "What's up with this video of Joe Biden?"
Well, but you can't necessarily say that, right? So, I mean, I guess you'd argue that the implication of how he was asking or what he was asking is kind of that of like, I'll only give you this money if you give me information, if it comes by your desk on this particular person. Maybe that's just a matter of interpretation, but I think that that's a greater issue.
And threatening to withhold congressionally approved aid unless you take action on his behalf. And the president of Ukraine was like, "I'm not sure." And he goes, "Well, can you look into that? I want to know what that's about."
It wasn't just, can you look into that? It was, if you don't find what I need, I might withhold aid that's already been congressionally approved for you. And that was the issue. If he was just asking questions, we wouldn't be having the conversation. He wouldn't have impeached, right?
So this is the point that I'm getting at. Mm-hmm. When this started and Donald Trump asked about this, specifically because there was a viral video of Joe Biden outright admitting to threatening to withhold congressionally approved aid unless a prosecutor got fired, you had
Is that something that happened?
Joe Biden breaking the law.
Sure. So there was a video of Joe Biden on stage making the claim/joke on stage where he's saying, "I told him you don't do it, you're not going to blah, 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 blah." Joke. But in terms of him but in terms of there actually being a serious offer on the table where he was like threatening to withhold aid, I'm not even sure if that was ever the case. We have that one statement that he was made public. Number one,
signed a sworn affidavit that it's what happened.
Sure. Number one. Number two, the impetus for Shokin being removed from Ukraine was not to get some kind of political dirt on an opponent. It was a completely different scenario. This is a prosecutor that all of Europe and over half of Ukraine wanted fired, that the United States was acting on behalf of the Western world and trying to pressure this prosecutor out because of his lack of prosecuting corruption in the country. That's a totally different thing than I threatened to withhold aid from this guy because he's not giving me dirt on potential political opponents.
So why is it that the guy who was being investigated, Mykola Zlochevsky, returned to the country? He had fled when Shokin was investigating him. And then after Joe Biden got Shokin removed, Zlochevsky returned to the country to begin working on Burisma again.
Why did he return to the country?
Well,
it could have been for any number of reasons. I'm not sure.
Right. So the argument from the Democrats, the specific corruption that wasn't being prosecuted referring to is the prosecution of Mykola Zlochevsky, the founder of Burisma.
Okay.
And the argument they made was he wasn't investigating him. That was the problem. And then Joe Biden says, and we got him out, and then they put in someone solid. The only issue is when Shokin had about a dozen active investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky fled the country. They froze his account. When Biden came in and got the prosecutor fired, Zlochevsky safely returned to Ukraine without fear of criminal prosecution. When Donald Trump made that phone call, Zlochevsky fled again. So it sounds more like, you've got Hunter Biden on the board of Burisma, you got a former CIA director on the board of Burisma, and Zlochevsky, the founder, and Shokin had 12 different around 12 to 14.
All of the investigations into Burisma were dead.
No, they weren't. That's not true.
It was
wrong.
Absolutely true.
Completely false.
They were only revived 1 month before Shokin was forced out. Every single one of those probes was completely dead.
That's wrong.
You can Google it and look for it if you want.
Yeah, so I'm citing Matt Taibbi,
Oh, God.
Right, and if you don't want to trust a journalist or whatever,
or like any actual like article, not a tweet, like any.
I'm not talking
like
about a tweet.
actual...
I'm talking about an article that he wrote breaking down what happened with Ukraine in his investigation into Zlochevsky, and this is from like 2018.
Okay, so your claim is that the probes into Burisma never went cold and never died; that they were active the entire time.
They were active the entire time. Right.
Okay, my understanding is that those probes were all cold and all dead, and it was part of the reason why.
Dead before now you're saying cold.
It's the same thing. They were being actively worked on. So there were probes, but nobody was doing anything with them until it was 1 month before Shokin was actually ousted that there was some progress started to be made on those.
So that's a very difficult question to get into. The fact is there were active investigations.
Well, but that's kind of the meat of what we're talking about, right?
Well, so
it's kind of important to settle the fact of the matter. That, yeah.
Were there 12 investigations? Yes or no?
I know that there were investigations open for a couple of years, but my understanding is they were open. It's not all that matters. They were dead investigations. There wasn't any progress being made on it. That's what I read that was reported.
Right. My point is this.
But that's pretty important because if they're being actively investigated, then that obviously changes a little bit the story that we're telling.
So did Shokin have investigations into Burisma and Zlochevsky? Yes, he had about a dozen.
But whether or not investigations live or dead, isn't that important? You don't think so?
Did Zlochevsky flee the country while these were on the books? Yes, he did.
I'm not
when
sure.
Shokin was removed and the investigations were officially stricken, Zlochevsky returns.
So do you think that there are criminal wrongdoings that he's done that he's not being prosecuted for?
What I think is that the United States is in an energy crisis, in a war with Eastern powers. The United States has been trying to get a pipeline for natural gas called the Qatar-Turkey pipeline into Europe, but Syria said no. Syria destabilizes for whatever reason. We want to run that pipeline through Syria, through Turkey, into Europe to offset the Gazprom gas monopoly. Russia runs natural gas into Europe through Ukraine, through Gazprom. It's about 20%. It's massively powerful for them and allows them to control prices. The United States has interests in setting up an energy company to offset that monopoly, hence Burisma. Hunter Biden's on the board, probably for these reasons. A former CIA director, probably for these reasons.
Wasn't Burisma one of the smaller gas companies in that country?
And absolutely. And it seems...
I'm going to be honest with you. I have no fucking idea what these guys are talking about in this. It's just like them debating... I mean, this part is like out of my fucking element. Holy shit.
So like the U.S. was trying to compete with Russia to get cheaper gas to Europe. And the argument made was that Europe was constrained by high gas prices from Russia and that we wanted the European economy to be bolstered and grow faster to compete with China. But Russia was basically keeping us pinned down.
Sure. This is nice conjecture, but like, is there anything backing up any of this aside from like...
This is all the official reporting.
What do you mean by official reporting?
So
there was official reporting that we got rid of Shokin because we wanted to bolster U.S. interests.
That's the only speculation I have. I'm saying based on the facts...
Oh, well, that's not like official reporting. That's speculation based on whatever information you have and your interpretation of that information.
It seems to me the issue was Shokin did have investigations into Burisma, which was a problem for U.S. interests, not because of corruption, but because it's more of a war front. It's more of a...
Do you think that Shokin was a corrupt prosecutor?
No.
Okay. Why did all of Europe and a lot of Ukraine hate him?
Because Europe wants cheap gas. Shokin was impeding that. It's not an issue of corruption. It's an issue of conflicting interests.
He was impeding how?
So active investigations into Burisma are impeding U.S. interests in competing with Gazprom.
Burisma isn't even the largest gas player in that country, though.
That's not the point. We don't have the Qatar-Turkey pipeline into Ukraine because Syria blocked it. So you have a multi-front effort going back to, I think, like the 2000s to get cheaper natural gas into Europe. So of course they're not going to like anybody who's got Eastern allegiances. It's possible that with Ukraine you had in the eastern part of the country more pro-Russia sentiment. With Yanukovych you had more pro-Russia sentiment, and you had government officials that were like, look, we are not just pro-West. Of course, then he gets ousted. There's unrest. I can't remember.
What do you mean for Yanukovych, though? Yanukovych was standing alone with that pro-Russian status, though. That wasn't all the government officials. That was part of the reasons why people were so upset with Yanukovych was because he was trying to push for Russia in opposition to what their parliament was even pushing for.
That's what I'm saying. And so there's probably... He wasn't the only person. The sentiment was fairly split, but was leaning towards the EU.
Had been voted on by their parliament like to favor the EU. That was what the vote was for.
And so the way I see it is there are probably elements of that government that were more favorable to Russia, which is why Europe doesn't like them. The people, Ukrainians who want to be part of the EU, members of the EU who want Ukraine to join because they want more control over natural gas, of course, naturally would oppose anybody who was siding with Russia.
Do you think that Ukraine was a corrupt country prior to 2014?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
do you think so? So for all of Europe and for everybody complaining about the corruption and stuff relating to Shokin, you think that all of that was BS and they just didn't like him because he was preventing their cheap oil or cheap gas?
Say that one more time.
You think that all of the upsetness that people across Europe and Ukraine had with Shokin had nothing to do with any of the corruption of the country or his lack of pressuring? Because like that's the official story that's given, and it seems to be like pretty consistent throughout. Like I
can only speak on a surface level about this one particular issue because I don't know the inner workings of all of Ukrainian politics.
Okay.
But what I do know is there has been a tremendous effort by Western forces leading to outright physical military conflict to get natural gas into Europe to offset Russia's control of gas prices. Naturally, it seems like these things are related. Speculative. The facts are...
I mean, maybe. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. But because I know we have like a pretty heavy energy dependence on Russia. I suppose. I guess this is just out of my fucking depth here.
The U.S. went to Syria and said, can we build the Qatar-Turkey pipeline? Syria literally said to the United States, that would be bad for our ally Russia, so we will not allow it. Fortunately for us, for whatever reason, Syria falls into civil war, and we just happen to oppose the guy who denied that. I don't think the whole reason for opposing it has to do with gas, but it's convenient for us nonetheless. We weren't able to do it, and to make it worse, Iran wanted to tap the same natural gas field and send the gas through Iraq and Turkey into Europe to strengthen Russia's control of energy. So the argument was the EU is trying to grow and become a unified bloc to compete with the growth of China, and Russia was basically impeding us because Russia wants to be their own big dog, right?
Sure. Man, if you ever wanted to revisit a detailed breakdown of this, it'd be interesting to do a little bit of reading prior to this. But let's say hypothetically I grant you all of that. Why didn't Trump say it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I feel like even if you're educated on a particular topic, you have to re-educate yourself if it's something you haven't talked about in such a long time. Because this is out of my fucking element, and obviously there's not a lot of pushback. But this seems like something that's very, Tim Pool's very invested in, and it doesn't seem like something that's Destiny's particularly invested in. And so now it's not even like really a debate. It's just kind of like I understand it can be a little bit difficult to kind of have this conversation without being able to revisit the topic for at least a moment to know what the fuck you're talking about. But I'll tell you one thing, brother. I have no idea what the fuck any of these motherfuckers are talking about. Okay.
Any of that.
He doesn't know what the hell's going on.
Okay, so then Trump's investigation into the impetus for this whole
video
conversation.
on the internet, bro.
Okay, so the impetus for this whole conversation of like Trump pressuring them to find out if any wrongdoers happened had nothing to do with anything you just laid out. It was just having to do with Hunter Biden and Joe Biden.
It had to do with him seeing a video and then seeing people and post memes. Probably, to be completely honest, it was Tucker Carlson.
Sure.
Who said something.
But it was a little bit more than just asking questions, because if he was just curious, I don't think that the question of aid being withheld would have ever been brought up in that conversation. So clearly there was a little bit. You're saying that Biden wasn't seen as a political opponent at all, but if that was the case, I don't know why Trump would go so far to try to solicit information from the Ukrainian government such that
I mean, like, there's no way you wouldn't have speculated that Biden was going to be like the next runner. There was literally no one else that was anywhere close to being able to be any like run in any capacity and compete with Trump. I mean, what did you have? Maybe I don't think there's anybody else that really would have run against Trump and been able to win potential. I don't know. I mean, who would it have been? Andrew Yang? I'm just kidding about that. What a terrible fall, by the way, from Andrew Yang. Isn't that crazy? I mean, he was doing so well, then he got upset that he got a little upset that he didn't get the nomination, and it felt like he just was like, and kind of just shit himself. I don't know. He started his own party instead of just kind of sticking it out. He ran once, and he didn't get the time he probably should have gotten. But I mean, that's the first time he ever fucking ran. So Biden never really announced too much before Trump did. But what is at this point? I'm just pretty sure that like it's pretty well known that like who else was going to be fucking running. Okay, Obama, yeah, for a third term. Yeah, true.
He would withhold aid or threaten to withhold aid in exchange for some information about him. Seems like a random politician to target. Like, why would he be so dead set on getting information about Biden?
The Democrats. They were calling him a Russian spy.
I think there's a little bit. I think it has to be a little bit more than that. Revenge to throw away.
Sure,
to get impeached.
I mean, you can think that, but I don't even care all that much about the speculation as to why he did it. Right?
Sure.
If you want to argue,
I think that's probably one of the most important parts. That is the most important part is why he did it.
But you have to make assumptions to get to that point.
If he's asking for dirt specifically with respect to a political opponent, I'm making assumptions. I feel like there's a lot more assumptions being made on your end that he was just genuinely interested in what Joe Biden had said and was threatening to withhold aid because he wanted a legitimate investigation of the firing of a prosecutor.
I mean,
I feel like it's pretty legitimate.
What we know is that he said, "What's going on with this video? I want to see some action on this, or else." Right?
I feel like there was a little bit more said than that, but I don't remember it's in a long time.
Well, I was trying to paraphrase for the sake.
Sure, but I feel like the specific requests he was making for information are probably pretty important. I could look up exactly what the charges are alleged, but it's been a while. But
so I guess the reason I bring it up is not to just debate Trump or whatever, but to ask the question of, should we indict Joe Biden for doing the same thing?
I don't believe Joe Biden did the same thing, though. The request and who was.
Well, my understanding is like the one is that Trump was trying to withhold aid that Congress approved to Ukraine until they would give him dirt, which would potentially pressure Ukraine to cook up fake dirt on Hunter Biden, who was just some bullshit consultant for some fucking energy company or whatever. Versus, and I'm not super educated on it from what I'm hearing here, versus there was some asshole in government that wasn't, or like a prosecutor that wasn't prosecuting and it was engaging in corruption, and the entire Western world was like, this guy's bad. And Joe Biden might have potentially been like, hey, you need to go, or we're not going to do such and such. I think that even if you think that they're both illegal, I don't know that they are, they seem a little bit different. They seem like drastically different. And it's interesting because, before we only cared about the one dead American citizen in Yemen that was bombed, not the however many other people who died. And so, like, by your own logic of caring more about American people and American citizens, you would care more about what Trump was doing, trying to get opposition or trying to get dirt up on opposition, rather than what Biden apparently had done, which was trying to oust a corrupt prosecutor in some capacity, right? And that's just what I'm reading from this situation, so I might be a little bit ignorant in my understanding of what's happening. But that's what it sounds like.
on behalf of was far different than.
But Joe Biden does not have the authority to threaten to withhold congressional.
I don't know if Joe
aid.
Biden actually threatened to withhold aid.
But he admitted on camera that he did.
He said something on camera that I don't
He
know.
literally
if that's what he
said on
did.
camera, I told him that if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion. And he said, you don't have the authority to do that. I said, call the president, ask him, see what he says. Well, son of a bitch. 6 hours later, he's fired.
Trump also said on camera that he could shoot somebody on 6th Street and not get arrested for it.
But that's different from admitting to committing crimes.
I don't know if Biden admitted to a crime there or if he was just talking shit. Biden also was in front of an audience saying that he had, like 170 IQ and graduated from Harvard Law or something, right? He obviously didn't do that, right? So I don't know when Biden is on stage like, I told him I was going to withhold his. I don't know if he's just like, he got his big boy pants on and he's talking shit. If he actually did do that and he didn't have the authority to do it and it was on behalf of some selfish motive or whatever, then yeah, I think there should obviously be an investigation. But the fact that there's never been an official statement confirming that, there's never been any, aside from the Ukrainian officials confirming that, and
maybe there should be.
Everything relating to that. Yeah, but every time Republicans say there should be and they go and look, they find nothing, okay? But whether it's Benghazi, whether it's Hillary's emails, whether it's
we know the Hillary's email stuff was there. Like that's not even.
We don't know if Hillary Clinton gave a command to delete stuff that shouldn't have been deleted to impede an investigation. We don't know that. We never found information about it, which is what the charge would have been for.
Sure. We know that she had a server with 35,000 emails on it. We know that her staff smashed hammers. We know that one of her staff.
I'll tell you one thing. My server has like 25,000 emails too, dude. You know how many fucking emails I get? All right. I think what was it? I see. I don't remember all these specifics. This happened so long ago. I think it had something to do with like her story I think was that she accidentally like linked her fucking personal computer or something to her emails or whatever, and then like fucking emails that were supposed to be encrypted ended up coming through, and then blah 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 blah. I mean, it probably is a bunch of bullshit. Probably just a woman. Have you ever thought about that? Just a silly woman. But that was when I was first getting into politics. A lot of this stuff was, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Some stuff I just don't know too much about.
Staffers, I guess, he went on Reddit and he said, how can I purge emails with someone's name on it or something like that?
Sure.
And like, I think, didn't he get charged or something?
I don't know.
I
think he was granted immunity in exchange for information.
Yeah. That's crazy, right? I remember when that happened, like some dude on Reddit found the account and they were like, I think this guy worked.
Sure, but the crime that we were looking for was whether or not Hillary Clinton ordered classified emails to be deleted. It doesn't seem like that was, we spent a whole lot of time talking about that. And for all the complaining that we do about a judge indicting Trump or intelligence agencies interfering in elections, Comey coming out and making the statements that he did about Hillary Clinton were not only unprecedented, but also potentially election altering too. So
do you think?
I remember that. I remember Comey came, I don't remember the specifics, but he came out with more speculation that Hillary might have done it like right before the election, and I think a lot of people were saying that turned the tide because Hillary was supposed to be like a shoo-in. Epic woman moment. Am I right, guys?
Barack Obama ordering a drone strike that killed an American citizen warrants an investigation of that?
There might have already been an investigation. I don't know what the vetting process inside of orders from the government.
Well, like whether there was or wasn't. Do you think there should have been?
Maybe.
Yeah, there probably always should be when there's collateral damage. Didn't it happen? Was it in Afghanistan or Pakistan? Wasn't there a hospital that we accidentally bombed like a year and a half ago, I think?
Probably.
Where I think like 20 or 30 people died and it was all civilians.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, anytime something like that happens, there should obviously be some type of oversight.
But
that's different.
I just find it really interesting that Tim Pool doesn't seem to care unless it's American citizens. And like, just weird to me. I don't know. It's like, yeah, this one guy. How many people died in that strike that didn't deserve to die? It's just interesting. Like obviously, I mean, I would prioritize Americans too, but like, I mean, anytime a civilian dies in a drone strike, that sounds horrible, no?
Between like there needs to be a criminal charge for an intentionally destructive act done, right? Do you agree that there's a world of difference between Biden ordered an American citizen killed overseas versus American citizen dies as a result of collateral damage from a drone strike? Those two things are worlds apart, right?
Yeah.
Well, the added context is we're not at war with this country, and
it doesn't matter. There's still, even if we aren't at war with the country, there's still worlds apart, right?
Well, so let's slow down for a second.
Sure. My question is very simply: if
the authority granted to the president does not extend to bombing any random country.
Well, it seems like that's not where we're at legally right now, right?
I think it's not where we're at because the American people don't do anything about it.
Did we vote in Congress to bomb the Syrian airport when Trump returned fire for whatever gas attacks?
No, but I think there's something different to an active war zone we do have troops on the ground in, and I don't agree with Trump
we're not
firing.
at war with Syria.
We have ground troops. We haven't declared a war since World War II. I don't.
Sure, but we didn't even have a extended use of for authorized military force,
I don't agree with Trump's firing.
Sure, I'm just saying that like if an American citizen even would have died on the base, I'm just saying that we're not voting for war in these areas, right? We're still bombing them. So it seems like if you're asking me a moral question versus a legal question, those are two different things. If you're asking me legally, it seems like that seems to be that the president can indeed order drone strikes someplace that we're not at war with. That seems to be where we're at legally right now. Morally, should he be able to? I don't know. I don't know what the justification is.
Well, we don't technically get in wars anymore, right? Like anytime we fight a battle, it's always through Russia. Like hence the situation going on in Ukraine right now. But we don't have any formal wars, so like there's a technical war on, or I guess non-technical war on terror, but we don't declare it a war. We're just kind of not there anymore, I guess, socially or politically, where we will do a war, but we'll still fight battles, right? So does the official declaration of war necessarily matter?
for that. But
let's jump to this next story from the Tampa Bay Times. DeSantis says Florida will not assist in possible Trump extradition after indictment. The Florida governor weighed in on Twitter. Okay. He said the weaponization of the legal system.
Now that seems like a political move, okay? But hey, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong.
To advance a political agenda turns the rule.
Proxy wars don't count. I mean, from a semantic perspective, right? Isn't Tim Pool arguing that we're not technically in a war, so it's wrong? It's like, yeah, the proxy war, I guess, doesn't count from the official declaration. That's my understanding of his perspective. It's like the proxy nature of the war wouldn't count, because we're not officially at war. I think I could be wrong about my about what I'm saying, but I think that's what they're referring to. No.
Law on its head. It is un-American. The Soros-backed Manhattan DA has consistently bent the law to downgrade felonies and to excuse criminal misconduct. Yet now he is, and there's a second tweet here. Where is it at? Wait, oh, okay. Yet now he is stretching the law to target a political opponent. Florida will not assist in an extradition request given the questionable circumstances at issue with the Soros-backed Manhattan prosecutor and his political agenda.
It's interesting that Tim feels that going after Trump here is political, which it might be, like I said before. But he doesn't feel that Trump actively asking for information about Joe Biden is him going after a political opponent. It's just very interesting how, like, when it comes to a conservative, there might be a conspiracy, but when it comes to like a progressive, or when it comes to conservative being, for lack of a better term, targeted or potentially targeted, it's a conspiracy. But if it's a progressive, that's just par for the course. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, oh no, it's like the best faith interpretation when it's happening to somebody that you like, you know what I mean? And when it's somebody you don't like, it's the worst faith interpretation. It's just interesting, I mean, it all sounds like it might be politically motivated in some capacity, but
what do you think?
Does Trump questioning the Trump Ukraine withholding of money sounds much more sussy than what's happening here, but I could be wrong.
Thoughts?
Is he actually Soros backed?
I think so.
Or was it that, like, because I thought that the actual thing was like George Soros contributed to a PAC that has also contributed to him. I think it's a little different, but regardless.
But even outside of that, I mean, Ron DeSantis saying we're not going to allow. What is he saying?
We're not going to extradite, right? Is what it sounds like.
Well, did he even really say that? He said, "Will not assist in the extradition." It's like a pretty tepid statement, to be completely honest. So,
well, it sounds like he's, he wants conservatives to know that he's trying to appeal. Maybe could be wrong. He's trying to appeal to the old trumpets, or maybe he's just genuinely feels that way. I guess I don't know. Dude, who fucking knows, man?
Oh, I don't even know if there's an actual question to be asked. Should Florida assist in the extradition? Like, does it matter?
Well, it kind of matters. I think it matters based on the precedent of the crime. If this is a crime that they wouldn't normally extradite for, then they probably don't have an obligation to, right? Like, I don't think California would extradite me if I had like an outstanding speeding ticket in Iowa, right?
Yeah, well,
this might be a similar thing where they don't extradite. But if there was if somebody did a double homicide and Florida's like, we're not going to extradite them, that'd probably be a pretty big deal.
I see what he's saying. It might just be a virtue signal from DeSantis of like, we're not going to extradite, but like they wouldn't have done it anyway, so it makes them look good. I wonder. I guess I just don't know.
But yeah, I don't know for a crime like this if extradition is ordinary or not.
Donald Trump. What's the charge that he falsified a legal bill?
It's that he falsified a legal bill, but it has to be something more than that, right? Because that charge in and of itself is a misdemeanor that the statute of limitations would have expired on. So it's that he falsified that legal bill in the commission or the obscurement of another crime. I don't know what other crime is, right?
I think it's related to election stuff. The argument was that it pertained to campaign finance, or they use campaign funds to do it, or something like that. Yeah. Because Cohen billed Trump campaign or whatever. But I guess we'll see when the indictment comes out if they're stretching this up to a felony. My view is it's all overtly political, and this country is being ripped to shreds. So I don't know if it really matters whether DeSantis is going to do anything or not. It's whether we can have a debate about it or not, no one's going to agree. The end result is just going to be people on the right saying that Trump is being politically persecuted, and people on the left saying it's justice.
Well, it only matters for the primary because DeSantis this whole time has been trying to position himself as Trump without the bad stuff. That's sort of his whole brand. But as you go into this more and more, you're going to see that DeSantis really isn't a Trump guy. He's going to try and make his own brand of sort of Trumpism, but with some other stuff. And
yeah, I don't. What was it? Oh, the other day I remember hearing DeSantis, like he had said at one point that he basically thought that everything going on in Ukraine was like a waste of money and like kind of a political type of a situation. And then that seems to have changed now. Where he was like, well, let me recontextualize, and he offered more support to Ukraine now. So I think that in general, the Republican Party is distancing themselves from Trump in like certain ways, but they still want to grasp onto like that Trump vote, or at least DeSantis does, which just makes sense politically. because there are enough of them, and they're very strong. They're very dedicated and loyal. All right, so maybe he's trying to tap into that.
And I think a lot of hardcore Trump people like myself. I mean, I was a day one 2016 supporter. Right when he came down the golden escalators, I was already sold. But a lot of people that I know in D.C. or in sort of these other circles, they think, oh, well, we should move on from Trump. It's time for DeSantis to take over. But I mean, the reality is, this whole thing is only going to help Trump. I think the mugshot.
Why?
It's going to be on T-shirts.
I don't think any of it's going to help. I think you have to be a little bit of. I think people are tired of Trump. I think most people. It's a loud minority of people who are still fucking cumming themselves for Trump. I think a lot of Republicans have kind of like a lot of them might vote for Trump just if he ran, but I don't think he's the guy anymore. I mean, DeSantis probably is more the guy because DeSantis hates gay people, and I don't know. Isn't he trying to do something with like schools or something? I don't even know. I'm just making a joke there. But DeSantis, from what it seems like to me, a lot of conservatives like DeSantis more than. I mean, that's what it seems like. I could just be wrong. But I could see him being a little bit more of a political pull than Donald Trump, you know?
It's going to be art. Like, people are going to love it. On the left, they're loving it because they think, oh, we finally got him. We got the handcuffs on Donald Trump. But on the right, they're just going to think he's a martyr.
Can I play this video from Dash Dabrowski?
No.
I think I got to turn it down.
Donald Trump has been indicted in Manhattan. The grand jury just voted to indict Donald Trump for his hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. This is big news.
I don't know if he realizes, like, if he's in control of his moves, when he goes,
what the fuck?
What is he? Been indicted. He tilts his head forward and he gets shadow under his eyes and looks real villainous for a second.
What's it called? The Kubrick stare?
Comes back up. Yeah, it's awesome.
I'm sorry. I think
highly
it's
entertaining.
unwell.
Soy jacking.
It's an act. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
he's been doing this for money.
When it comes to stuff like this, I think it's really important that you mentally swap the people out in your head to figure out how you feel about it, because we have a huge problem right now in this country with actually having principled positions on any fucking issue whatsoever. So I think that when people are trying to think, like, should Trump get arrested for this? Like, think, like, if it was Hillary Clinton, would you feel the same? If it was AOC, would you feel the same?
Yeah.
If it was DeSantis, would you feel the same? I think it's really important to do.
I think that we should arrest AOC, frankly, until she releases those feet pics. Okay? Based liberal sexisms? How do you like that? Bro, please, you're very annoying. I know that you're in here just to troll me. The issue is you don't know the Republican point of view, but you are speaking to it. But you called out Tim Pool on almost the same thing. I don't know what you're talking about, but I have like a good amount of Republican family members, and like I'm just listening to them. So maybe my moderate conservative Republican family members who are normal people and aren't like fucking jerking off the pictures of Donald Trump, maybe they're not most of the Republican Party. But I like to think that most Republicans aren't fucking psychopaths that come all over fucking like fleshlights with a picture of Donald Trump as president on it. So that's just me. I just want to be good faith. I think that Republicans are good people. Trump is just not a good Republican. That's what I like to think. All right. For how many Republicans left the Republican Party because of Trump was going fucking batshit crazy. Like, I think that it's about time that conservatives get like a little bit of a fucking they get a little break handed to them and not being labeled as psychopaths for having a party that's associated with that fucking nutcase. So
these mental swaps to check for honesty to make sure that it's not just, like you said, like all partisan politics at the end of the day.
I agree,
especially when legal systems are involved.
I agree, but I don't think it's principles. I don't think anyone's principled at all.
Yeah,
but I'm not saying that.
I am too.
I'm not saying that from like a dejected, sense, or like a not like, I'm jaded and blackpilled. I'm saying it that people genuinely don't understand the moral philosophies around principles and their positions. So the example I often give is when it came to Florida on the parental rights and education bill, you had conservatives being like, parents have the final say in whether or not their kids are being exposed to this stuff and whether or not their kids are going to get these treatments. The teachers have no right to withhold that information from the parents. And then my response is, in Washington, they completely agree that the parents have final say. So when the parent says the child should get sex change surgery, the government should not be allowed to intervene to stop it. You see the point? The principle is the same. Should parents have final say? But both conservatives...
Not because he's saying anything wrong. I just don't quite understand the point that he's making here. I think they're talking about... Because we just kind of like shifted to trans people, and I'm a little bit jarred here.
And left liberals or whatever position have a differing view of when it should be allowed. When it comes to a child deciding they are trans, the left passes laws saying they can withhold that from parents. When it comes to parents wanting to give their children sex change surgery, conservatives argue the state should intervene to stop that. So which is it, right? People don't have principles.
Okay. Fuck. All right. I think I'm understanding. Let me just listen to this one more time because this point I think is really bad.
Hold that from parents. A child, liberals or whatever position, have a differing view of when it should be allowed.
Okay.
When it comes to a child deciding they are trans, the left passes laws saying they can withhold that from parents. Okay. When it comes to parents wanting to give their children sex change surgery, conservatives argue the state should intervene to stop that.
Okay.
Liberals or whatever position have a differing view of when it should be allowed. when it comes to a child deciding they are trans, the left passes laws saying they can withhold that from parents.
Okay, what they're referring to here is just that if a kid identifies as LGBTQ in some capacity and teachers realize that, they don't have to tell the parents. The second instance comes to parents having the final say on literal sex change, like or gender affirming care. Now, you can, like, I am apprehensive about kids transitioning, and I'm not saying that they should or they shouldn't. You know, frankly, it seems like a really difficult decision that parents, doctors, and the child should all be a part of. I just don't want misdiagnosis. But there's a difference between not telling a teacher not telling a parent that their kid might be gay or LGBTQ versus getting all the way to the point of surgery. Those are so different. One's just like, hey, I might like cock. The other one is like, I want to cut my cock off, right? They're not actually doing that. They push it in the body. The point is these two things are not the same. They're not the same in any capacity. Like, these are very different things. So what he's referring to here makes absolutely no fucking sense. Like, this isn't a level of cognitive dissonance. This is you just not, like, you have to know that you're being dishonest here, right? Like, you have to know that you're being a silly goose right now. Like, there's no way you're comparing teachers. Like, it's not the same thing, especially in a more conservative area where, like, some fucking gay kid has much higher chance of being, you know, ostracized by their family if they're gay. It's not the same thing. There's a difference between teachers not having to tell a parent that the kid said they might be LGBTQ versus a gender confirmation surgery or like some crazy shit in like some other way. You know, I'm not saying I support, like, parents, I think definitely should be involved in the conversation about helping their kids transition, whether they, you know, in some capacity. It's a very complicated decision that I think should be left between the doctor, the kid, and the parents, of course. But these are not the same thing. They're very different.
When it comes to parents wanting to give their children sex change surgery, conservatives argue the state should intervene to stop that. So which is it, right? People don't have principles, they have moral foundations, and they have lines that they're willing to cross or not cross. And so
Temple,
both sides
like
will argue
goofy
my principle
goober.
is X, but it does not apply.
Damn.
That's my point.
There's a bad point.
So I
do better.
I don't think there's a do better or there's a bad. It's quite literally, if two factions of people have different moral standards, that's it.
Yeah, but I think the problem is not being honest about those moral standards. Like, I think that's the issue, because when we argue for certain principles, I think everybody ends up, at the end of the day, we're all attacking like the shadows and the ghosts of the people that we're arguing against, because nobody actually believes.
Like, I would say more if conservatives are worried about kids transitioning for their own safety, which I understand, then we should also be worried about gun violence, and maybe we should figure out some laws to implement there. That would be like a level of cognitive dissonance. I'm sure we can come up with like a level of progressive cognitive dissonance. Oh, I got a perfect one for you. If progressives are always talking about how women are equal and have the same autonomy and agency over themselves as men, but then the second that a rich guy sleeps with a woman, even if he doesn't leverage his power, and they say, "Oh, well, a rich guy shouldn't be able to sleep with a non-rich woman because of power dynamics," that is cognitive dissonance. You want to assign agency to a woman, but then the second that they engage with somebody that has more money than them or power, all of a sudden they don't have the ability to handle themselves. There are definitely situations where people can be pressured, and money and fame can be a part of that. But there's a difference between a woman wanting to fuck a guy because he's famous versus a guy saying, "I will ruin your life," or if you won't fuck me. Those are two very different things. We have this thing called groupies. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but there are girls who like to fuck rich, famous musicians, right? That's a way that I would see like there's a level of cognitive dissonance in more progressives. Like, progressives do tend to infantilize women and treat them like fucking babies, with some of the way that we talk about women and sex, and having the right conversation about sexual assault, always positive, right? Teaching young men to create comfortable atmospheres for women to say no, but then also women need to assert their boundaries to say, "I don't want this," right? You can't be sexually assaulted if you don't say, "I don't want this," right? So there you go. Like, that's a way that there's cognitive dissonance when it comes to like a more progressive ideology, just off the dome piece, right?
Believes in a lot of things they're saying, and that hurts our ability to actually move the conversation forward. Like, there's a lot of people, for instance, I think I even saw this on your Twitter, I don't remember the tweets, there's a lot of conservatives that fucking hated red flag laws, and now after this trans shooting, a whole bunch of conservatives are like, well, should mentally ill people have guns? I'm not actually sure. And it's like, what changed?
And that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Is that the principles don't apply to most people, left or right.
Sure. But then there are principles there. You just have to dig a little bit deeper. So like, for some conservatives, principles like fuck trans people, I don't want them to have any rights. Rather than like, I don't agree with like red flag laws. And we just have to get to like the deeper positions where they actually are, so we can fight against those positions.
See, my thing with red flag laws is I'm completely in favor of them so long as they have an adversarial due process. The problem with red flag laws, literally, is that they're non-adversarial. It's like someone can go to a judge, the judge can issue a writ and just come and take your guns. Whereas due process requires your rights to confront an accuser, to file a rebuttal, to say no, and then actually have a chance to have proper adjudication. So I used to not be in favor of it until it was actually conservatives who argued that through due process, your rights can be curtailed. Hence, like being put in prison. If you break the law and then a court gives you due process and says you broke the law, we can literally lock you in a box and take everything away from you. Okay. And I'm like, okay, fair point. In that case, if you're mentally ill.
If that's true, I agree with Tim. I'm not sure what I'm not sure how, everything works when it comes to red flag laws. I do know that, again, we don't seem to be able to properly deal with taking away guns from domestic abusers, even though that would be a huge lifesaver. So, and I think that's already in law that you can take that away. So, help police, right?
And then someone files a claim saying you're a risk to yourself and a harm to yourself or others. Then you should have the right to receive a notice in the mail, answer that claim, reject it, and then have a judge actually issue a standard due process. If you're in prison, you can't have guns. You know what I mean? So if there is some standard by which we believe you are a threat and you are going to cause harm, then you have a right to challenge that in court, same as any other criminal charge you have. And then if you lose, come take your guns.
Sure. And I think that is that argument is defensible. But it's not defensible if it only comes up when a trans person goes on a shooting spree. That's the only issue, agree. Right? So it seems like there's a lot of arguments against red flag laws that are still standing. That those arguments didn't go away. Like I'm probably against red flag laws. I lean slightly against them just because I feel like it makes it so hard. If you're a guy that likes guns and you've got mental issues, man, going to a therapist becomes really fucking scary. Yeah. Because what if you get a diagnosis that is now precluding you from owning firearms?
Sure, but I don't think that by itself is enough. I understand what he's saying. If you're somebody that I don't think that any mental illness should bar you from being able to have a gun. Obviously, having gender dysphoria shouldn't make it so you can't have a gun. That person clearly has more than just gender dysphoria, that they are deeply disturbed. And I understand, if you're somebody who loves guns, you may not want to get mental health evaluations because it may make you feel like you'll have your guns taken away. And I do get that. But then at the same time, I also feel like that's an out. There's no, nothing's ever going to be 100%. You're never going to solve every problem. So I will take the getting guns out of the hands of people who may use those guns to harm people at the expense of some minority of people potentially getting negatively impacted, because that person, if they do get evaluated and they lose their guns, then they probably should have lost their guns. Their fear of getting evaluated, they probably weren't going to get evaluated anyway, right? So I get what he's saying. It's something to keep up the negatives, but I think it's still worth it overall.
And now you've got to show up in court and you've got to fight a judge for your Second Amendment right, which is a very important one in the United States. That gets hairy. And depending on how people represent red flag laws or what type they're pushing for, it is a really scary thing. But I'm just saying that. Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a challenge.
It reminds me of the do you guys know BoJack Horseman?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like that scene with saying the women carry guns and she's in front of Congress and she's like, well, if you don't want women to carry guns because you're worried about what's going to happen, then you either have to ban all guns, or you've got to let women do it, and they ban all guns. It's like, okay, that's kind of what it feels like happened with the transgender thing with the after the shooting. Where conservatives are all of a sudden, because they're like, well, maybe it is really important that we look at the mental health of people that have guns, and everyone on the left is like, what the fuck? We're like, yeah, of course, but.
Well, I agree. I think if someone goes on Prozac, you could argue that they're not mentally well for a gun. If someone's an alcoholic,
that's 25% of fucking Americans at this point, though.
Yeah, I don't think that just having some depression is enough to bar somebody from having a gun. It would have to be a little bit deeper than that. We live in a society that has more and more mental health issues, and so I don't think that's something that might be I don't think that Ethan Klein should not be able to have a gun, right? He should be fine. He just takes fucking Prozac or whatever. I think that there should be higher standards for it than just taking some kind of a fucking a Xanax. Thank you so much, Azure Flora, nice, with a 3-month sub. Small got woo, little late, but Papa got time. Hell yeah, brother or sister or thister.
Pharmaceuticals, that's scary. And there's another interesting thing I talked about when I was in L.A. in Venice, and you got those guys selling weed cards. And they're like, I'm walking down the street going to the skate park, and this guy goes, yeah, man, you get your weed card? Yeah, you get your weed card? And I'm like, no, I'm a weed card. He's like, why not? Why don't you have your weed card? And I'm like, I don't need one. He's like, I'm not sick. And he goes, oh, well, you skateboard, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, don't you hurt your legs or whatever? And I was like, yeah, sometimes my knees. And he goes, oh, bro, you got knee problems? Oh, you need some meat. You need some weed. You got to get a weed card. Doctor will get you signed up. Not interested. You get that weed card, you smoke weed, you aren't eligible. You can't own a gun.
Maybe for physical pain, you could get away with it. But if you say it's stress, you're
no.
Wait. Is that true? Or are you saying it could theoretically be true with red flag laws?
On the form, it asks you if you are a user of narcotics. And so the risk is if you...
Wait, is weed a narcotic? Is weed a... Oh, it is. It's a Schedule 1 substance under the Controlled Substance Act, meaning that it is a high potential of abuse. No currently... Is that considered a narcotics? Wait, I don't think it is. It's not weed is not a narcotic. I could be wrong. I'm trying to look it up. It's classified as a controlled substance, which is changing it based on individual laws like every day. Like it's not really considered that in a lot of states now. But is a Schedule 1 substance a narcotic? I just don't know that. It doesn't say it under the, maybe it is. It's not a narcotic, right? I'm not seeing anything that says that it is. Opium, codeine, heroin, Demerol, Darvon, morphine, methadone, Vicodin, Oxycontin are narcotics, but I don't think that weed is. It's a Schedule 1 substance, but it's not a narcotic. I don't think. So this doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to be a narcotic. I could be wrong. I'm Googled it and I'm not seeing it. Wait, it is. Okay, narcotic drug types, but marijuana is also considered a narcotic by the commission, although people are working to change it. Okay, apparently it is. Interesting. So it is classified as a narcotic, even though it's not a narcotic. Okay, interesting. All right. What I do know, and this is what I was told, in New York, I believe they now made it legal like a while ago to smoke weed, and I worked for a bus company, and they're like, all right, we jokingly said like we can smoke weed now, and their boss like, no, you can't. If you smoke and it's in your system, like you're gonna get fired. And we're like, why? It's legal. It says it doesn't matter. Like, you know, they're still like it takes a while to update like particular laws and whatnot. So I was like, oh, okay. Not that I really care because I know intention anyway. I fucking hate this, like this event. It's just so cringe. Because these fucking asshole one-shots everything, and if you're not using like a decent weapon, or like this, my weapon is decent. It's just like, oh, look at that, like how much fucking energy I have to put into killing something.
Have a weed prescription card? Mm-hmm. Yes, you are.
But I wonder, like, how would that work with the red flag? Would it work like from a state level or a federal level? That's, I guess, the bigger question, more than anything else. Okay, I guess I don't need the fucking extra, help here. Suck my wiener.
And that means you will be ineligible for owning a gun.
That's insane.
Interesting.
Huh. Yeah, so you ever see what are they called? The forms you fill out when you have to buy a gun? It asks you if you're a user of narcotics.
And they have it classified federally as a Schedule 1 narcotic.
Right, it's like the worst possible one. If you have a weed card, I don't think you'll be able to argue you weren't lying. They're going to say, you have a weed card prescription, like, to do this drug.
There's no shot. I can't believe that.
I've never heard that's actually real, that anyone's ever had their guns taken away because they had a weed card. I've never heard that. I can see that argument, though.
You know what? I know that's not the case, because if that was, I would have heard conservatives complaining. I would complain about it.
They want Hunter Biden arrested over it because he filled out a form and said he wasn't a drug user when he's a crackhead.
No, but that's
literally why.
Isn't that different from? Wait, what? Sorry. That blew my mind. That's cocaine. That's not weed. What are you talking about?
They want him arrested.
For Hunter Biden?
Hunter Biden filled out a form. The form was released publicly, and on it he said he was not a drug user, despite...
For the 4473 for a gun?
The background check form for a gun. It asks you if you're a user...
Yeah, but he was a user of okay, whatever.
Of narcotics.
I feel like they wanted him arrested because they said that he's doing illegal dealings overseas where he's roping his father into the...
Specifically for the gun issue. It was like his girlfriend or whatever, his wife threw the gun in a dumpster behind his school.
Did they accurately date the crack use, though, for when he filled out the form?
That was the question.
That's really important.
Is the argument he quit doing crack a long time ago, thus he was saying no, and the argument was he's like still a crackhead. They found a crack pipe in his car around some time or whatever. And so I am not saying overtly and outright every single person, whoever has a weed card, will never be able to buy a gun again. I'm saying if they want grounds to take your weapons and you have had a weed card, they will come, they will have a notice, and they will say, look, you have a weed card, you're a user, tell it to a judge, we're taking your guns. They'll use it as a pretext.
They might, yeah. Okay.
We do.
Wait, hold on. Okay, I looked up the 4470 things. I'm curious now. So it says, so it says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana? So I would say if you've got the card, you're probably not unlawful, but federally, as a federal form, maybe you would be.
You would absolutely be. They actually say on the form, I'm pretty sure it says note, regardless of local laws. See what it says? It says that, right?
Yeah, it says possession of marijuana remains unlawful under federal law, regardless of whether it's been legal. Oh, shit, well. Government's coming for my gun soon.
Completely insane.
You're like, oh crap.
This country is built on the back of hemp, man. Look at George Washington's eyes on the $1 bill. He's stoned.
Although I will say, I've never heard of like the ATF cross-referencing databases to like axe guns from people that have like legal marijuana cards or whatever.
But
I think the argument is like it could happen, and I kind of get it. So what I'm hearing from Tim Pool is that like if this was a thing, they could potentially, if they're looking for an excuse to take your guns away, they could go this far. To me, it's comparable to like when Starbucks started being very pedantic about their targeting of people, right? So this, I talked about this yesterday, but this happens in every company that you like. Well, not every company, but this could happen in like any company where there are always these are your standards. You have to come to work on time. You have to do this, that, this, and this. They have all these things, and then when you start working there, everything almost everywhere is a little bit more relaxed than they claim for it to be. So like they'll be like, if you're maybe some places will be okay if you're a minute or two late. Maybe some places will be okay if you do this. Maybe some places will be okay if you don't fully do that. That's more of like, we want you to do 95% of your job, not necessarily 100% of your job, right? We tell you we want 100%, and then now you get a little wiggle room so a little bit. And so what they're saying more is that like if the government decided that they wanted to explicitly target you for whatever reason, they could start going like, well, what about this? And that's kind of what I'm getting at if you're from the energy. Like that happened at my job sometimes. Like we would all be a little bit late, 1 or 2 minutes, and they never cared until one guy started showing up like 15 minutes late. And so they were like, if anybody's a minute late now, we're going to fucking write you up. And it became like a whole thing. But it's comparable to that. And that's what I think they did at Starbucks when they were organizing like unions. They started overly punishing people for shit that they never cared about before. Because technically it's against policy, but they never enforced it because it didn't really matter to them until all of a sudden it was like they did it in a way to be like a retaliation.
Can if they want to.
Theoretically, maybe.
We got news, ladies and gentlemen. We have information on the Trump indictment breaking.
Whoa.
Trump indicted reportedly on 34 counts related to falsifying business records. The indictment stems from Trump allegedly falsifying records concerning $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels in 2016. CNN reports they were informed of the number of indictments by an unnamed source. So we take that with a grain of salt. Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, yada, yada, yada. Let's play the clip from CNN. Do we have audio here?
My source is that this is 34 counts of falsification of business records, which is probably a lot of charges involving each document, each thing that was submitted as a separate count in a couple of matters.
Okay, well, that's it.
Is that like if he's like, yeah, and then he responds?
It has to be more than that.
More than what?
It has to be more than just counts of falsifying business records, I think. It has to be something election related to keep it to go past the misdemeanor thing, I think.
I'm gonna agree.
Unless it's all politicized.
I think it's definitely going to be more than just the Stormy Daniels thing.
Falsifying business records, is that like if they're in an email chain and he's like, are you sure? And then he sends the email, he's like, responds, yes. And then he's like, okay, then is that 3 counts?
My guess is going to be that I think he was paid back. Wasn't it over a year period or a 2-year period? The falsifying business record, like let's say that I paid you bi-weekly over an entire year, right? It would be 26 different payments that I'm lying about. So it'd probably be 26 separate counts of falsifying records. Okay. That'd be my guess. But again, it has to be more than just falsifying records because that's only a misdemeanor and the statute of limitations expired. And it's a fucking misdemeanor, right? We charge a president over a misdemeanor. That's the most insane thing. So it has to be something different.
Conservatives.
It has to be something more than that. It has to be something more than that. But
I agree. I think it's gonna be worse than people think. Right now, everyone's saying it's a Stormy Daniels thing. I bet it's gonna be something else.
Something completely different.
I don't know about completely different, but it's gonna be.
It's got to be related to like campaign fund misappropriation or.
Well, the question
something.
is, will it be dubious or will it be questionable or will it be?
Well, if it's dubious, they might take away his guns. Smoking, you get it? That's an old dad joke.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I kind of feel like it's probably going to be dubious. I mean, Ukraine Gate as it was, and Mueller and Russia and all that stuff did not pan out.
Even that's my joke.
In terms of indictments, there are a lot of good indictments that came from the Mueller investigation.
No, I mean like Trump isn't a Russian spy. He wasn't working with the Soviets.
Oh, probably.
They nothing.
Yeah, probably not. But you know what? It is said that the Republican Party likes Russians more than Americans nowadays. It seems. The whole like war. With Ukraine versus Russia, like so many conservatives coming out and saying like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this is just preposterous to me. I do understand that it's frustrating that we're sending money to Ukraine, but this is a Russian problem. Russia is antithetical to our beliefs. They're not a democracy. They don't believe in freedom for people. LGBT. Well, that's where I think it comes down to. Is that they share the same value. They share, for some reason, and I'm not saying all Republicans, but some conservatives, they just share, or some Republicans, they share more values with Russia because they hate gay people so much. And that is like, for whatever reason, the fucking, like, the pinnacle of some of the Republican Party now. And that's worth, like, supporting a place that's just not free. It's fucking crazy, and it's just fucking, it blows the shit through my balls. Like, it literally is like a piss whistle, like just fucking air into my penis, and then it goes into my scrotum, and my balls explode. Like, my cum flies out. It's like, boom, like the seam at the middle of my nutsack just splits open like a fucking Venus flytrap, and just cum shoots out. That's how fucking crazy it is to me.
Was born of those things. You know, I mean, I feel like this is just like they're going to spin their wheels. Trump's going to fundraise off it. He's going to raise record amounts of money. There's going to be a mugshot that will turn into T-shirts. People will get rich off of it. Donald Trump will win the election in 2024, and then we'll not even talk about this moment later on.
But I guess
does this kind of thing give people the right to go deeper into his life and look for things and serve subpoenas and warrants and things? To like look at emails from 20 years ago? Does it open up old?
I would hope that prosecutors are being intelligent when it comes to charging somebody that's going to run for president. It's not even the fact he's a former president, it's that he's going to run for president. The absolute worst case scenario for the health of this country is that Donald Trump gets indicted, charged, and convicted of something that's not really that big of a deal that somehow inhibits his ability to run for office.
Yeah,
because
true.
now you've justified every single conservative that thinks that the system is trying to keep him out using judicial means.
Yeah,
the
true.
left doesn't even get to feel good. Because, like, let's be honest, let's say he goes to jail for something really stupid, like lying about, you know, paying off a porn star. Like, you don't even feel good. I wanted him to go down for like the P tapes for the Putin stuff, right? Not for this bullshit. So or BS. So
I agree with that.
I hope they're sitting on something good. Otherwise, they have to realize they're making the entire United States look like a joke.
That's fair. I hope. Yeah, that. I mean, if that happens, then yeah, conservatives will feel like they were right the whole time. That could be some very sad, sussy stuff. You know?
I don't think there's going to be anything there. I mean, it's been years. They've known about this for years, and they've not done anything. So it really just feels politically expedient.
And they just disbanded.
Well, could they really have done anything while he was in office, or no? I mean, I could just be wrong about that. But when Uganda banned being gay, conservatives were cheering, and I've seen comments of people saying that they stand with Uganda. Incredible.
The grand jury 2 days ago or something for a month.
Today they announced it was going on break for a month, and then also they're like, oh, by the way.
That's so weird. I have a question for you, Stephen. If it's kind of off topic,
Stephen,
but it's somewhat on topic. Like this, I'm talking about the war in Ukraine and the Russian war. What do you think is the solution to ending this or to the future?
Well, wait, hold on.
I mean, I feel like we're gridlocked. I mean, what can we really do? We like fundamentally being American is about like supporting our allies and people who want Western ideology. Like, you guys can shit, come, fart, you can cry as much as you want. West is the best. I don't care. I don't care about, oh, you're wrong. You have an American-centric perspective. From an objective perspective, we are the freest, most comfortable like ideology. Okay, freedom number one. Okay, we are the only country, like the most accepting countries when it comes to LGBTQ, when it comes to religious diversity, when it comes to racial diversity. We are the best. I don't know what to tell you. Are we flawed? For sure. We should definitely spread that ideology, specifically if another country wants to engage in that ideology like Ukraine does. Are they perfect? No, they could be a little regressive in some ways, but that's what they want, and we should support our allies that want to spread Western ideology because it is the Bestern ideology, okay? It's literally, that's why they call it Best Western, and I only stay in Best Westerns because I'm a real fucking American, okay? So, we should support Ukraine because Russia wants to take over parts of Ukraine. They have historically, systematically starved out Ukrainians, killed them that way, and implanted Russians to say, we have a claim here. So, that yeah, we should support them as long as we need to. If you have a problem with Russia, not Ukraine. That's just the reality of the situation. Okay? Sorry, cuck-servatives.
Hold on. First question is, how do you feel about the war in Ukraine?
I'm happy Ukraine is winning. I hope they get back Crimea. Fuck Russia.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be a solution to make that happen?
Literally
Ukraine
have sex with
winning
Russia.
the war and getting back Crimea and saying fuck Russia.
What's define winning the war?
Getting back Crimea. Having their borders restored to what they were in 1991 when they broke off from the Soviet Union and when the entire world recognized the country as having the borders that it did. That included the Donbass and included Crimea.
Oh man, well, there's a lot of people. Some of my friends think that same thing.
What's the I suppose justification for U.S. involvement?
Just they're our ally asking for help, and that's what America does. We help. Like, I don't know. Maybe if they had more oil there, conservatives would be more on board. I don't know. That's it. That's the justification. Holy fuck! I'm getting dumpstered. Stop pissing in my mouth, bro.
Justification for U.S. involvement is probably that like the stability of Europe is potentially at risk, that we are seeing an actor engaged in actions that haven't happened in decades where one sovereign state invades another sovereign state to steal territory from them. It's just something that we don't really see around the world anymore, especially in Europe. And I think that the opposition to that should be led by the United States. I think it's important for us to be seen as a leader of the world to do that.
Would you be in favor of a similar military response if it came to Taiwan?
Sure. Taiwan and Hong Kong are so much more complicated, and I'm not well versed enough in the history to know if I would feel the same for that.
The stability
Taiwan,
of Southeast
maybe,
Asia and the region, you know what I mean?
True, but I think that our responsibility, the presence we have, and the relationships we have with Southeast Asia. I mean, we do have good relationships with South Korea and Japan, but it's different than Europe. But I would have to read up way more on Taiwanese history.
Hey guys, they're not white. Listen, I know what he's saying. That like because part of his justification is because they are, they are European and it could like destabilize Europe. I get that, but also fuck China. Also love Chinese people. I love Chinese food. Okay, let me tell you something. I have this theory that men create, they like things, they affirm things based on if their penis enjoys it. Okay, that's why porn is still legal. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if you guys know what this is called, but this is a food. I get food boners. Okay, when I go to the Chinese buffet, I get a food boner. That's where I think about food so much that I'm like that's like so delicious that I don't get hard, but I get a tingle. You know what I'm saying, man? The boys know what I'm saying, and that's why I love China. Now, again, the Chinese government is antithetical to like the freedoms that we expose in America, and so like I think that we should help spread those. You know, if it has the negative impact of like massively destabilizing, it can be very complicated. I get the difference, but fundamentally speaking, like yeah, we should support all these people.
And the deals that China has carved out with respect to the autonomy of Taiwan, to know if I would feel the same way about defending them militarily versus Ukraine. But I feel very strongly about Ukraine, understanding of Ukrainian history and everything, that their borders should be respected.
Do you think the $100 billion price tag is justified?
Sure.
I think a really big price tag is justified. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and argue to know the difference between like 100 billion versus 1 trillion versus 500 billion dollars, but I think that it is worth it for the United States to be making heavy investments into the security of Europe. I think that position that we have as like the leader of the Western world and leading those efforts to protect Ukraine is really important.
Would you go to Ukraine and fight the Russians?
Fuck no.
Would you send other people's kids there to fight Russians?
I mean, like, I feel like this is kind of a weird. Like, listen, if you have decided to be a member of the military, and I respect you for that, like you kind of are signing up for this to some extent. I think that this war is much more justifiable than other wars that we've been in, or the fighting here is much more justifiable. Nobody ever wants to send somebody to war, but I just would say that like it feels like we're putting more responsibility on America than we are on Russia for doing the bad thing in the first place, and so like maybe consider that as a factor.
U.S. troops in Ukraine fighting Russians is probably something I would not support.
Well, what about?
Well, okay. Well, I've been like just from a moral perspective. Like obviously, logically, I also understand that we like putting an actual all-out war might turn into a problem. But like if it was a feasible thing, like yeah, sure, fuck it.
Special forces doing operations to assist Ukrainians.
Well, how special are they?
Don't think so.
Well, what about?
I'd have to think a lot. Well, like what does special forces mean? Like if we're talking about like people going over to like train troops, maybe. Like for instance, if we're sending weapon systems over there and we're sending troops over there to train them use those weapon systems, that might be important so that those weapon systems don't misfire or they're crashing planes up in the pole or some shit. They did do it one time. Yes, they did.
What about the U.S. using reconnaissance measures and surveillance to provide intelligence to the Ukrainians, to then have the Ukrainians use the weapons we provided to, say, sink the Russian flagship in the Black Sea?
I think so far, I think that's been...
Sure. Yeah, I think that the biggest problem I have is, like, I don't understand. Like, it makes no sense to me to dye your hair blue but not your beard. So, just saying.
Fair game. I think that a lot of people around the world share intelligence. That's probably just a given at this point. Us sharing intelligence with Ukraine is probably no different than China or Russia sharing intel with each other as well.
What about former U.S. military, now veterans, fighting on the ground in Ukraine using U.S. intelligence, U.S. weapons, and U.S. funding to assist Ukrainians in, say, like sinking ships? And
I think
like
it sounds silly, but I think there is a distinction that they are former U.S. military. The scary part about U.S. troops and Russian troops shooting at each other is the potential for escalation into
like a world war.
But if a former U.S. military person gets killed by a Russian troop, that's a Ukrainian soldier, that former U.S. It is what it is.
Do you really think Russia is going like, well, they're not really a U.S. military, so we're not going to do anything about it?
Absolutely.
I disagree.
I think there's a huge difference between that guy.
Well, I don't know if it means they won't do anything about it. I don't know exactly what they're referring to, but like it's one of them is official support versus unofficial support. I definitely think that it is a fact. It would be a factor, and well, it would something they would factor in. So yeah, sure. You know, whether they retaliate or not against whatever's happening, I don't know what they're referring to specifically. Is not the question. It's a question of like what's the proportionality of the response.
I used to be part of the U.S. military fighting Ukraine versus there are armed U.S. troops on the ground. There's a whole escalatory pathway for U.S. soldiers in Ukraine.
You think Putin cares?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, they just took down one of our drones, whether it was an accident or not. They did a fuel spray on it.
Sure.
And then
we do dumb shit like that to each other sometimes when it happens, but they're having uniformed U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine would be a massive escalation.
Do you think Russia is going to allow Ukraine to win?
Is Russia going to allow Ukraine to win?
I mean, I guess it gets to a point where do they have the resources to sustain? I think that Russia will try to make something seem like a win, right? That's kind of the goal overall, right? So like, you know, I guess that's like, how do you give Russia what feels like a win to them, even though they're fucking losers? And that's like, I don't know, how do you do that? Because, you know, that's the thing. I feel like Putin is just like an egotistical fucking, I mean, not even saying Putin, because you know what? I think that's a lot of us. There's like an egotistical aspect. I mean, frankly, the only reason we got like Brittany Griner back is because like it's a knock to our ego for them to get like a famous, you know, somebody famous in America like in jail. I think that was like a big motivation for us getting it back because it just looks bad, right? So, you know.
Well, I mean, they've allowed them to get as far as they have so far.
But now they're positioning nukes north of Ukraine and Belarus.
I heard the strategic nuclear weapons being moved into Belarus. I don't know why. I don't know if that's posturing.
The UK is deploying depleted uranium tank busters, which are radioactive. Russia responded by saying, "We warned you that if you use depleted uranium, that's nuclear escalation." And now they're moving nukes.
Sure, but they've been talking about nuclear escalation for like 2 years.
But then
like,
they did it, and now Russia is sending nukes into the region.
Sure, they into Belarus, yeah. But like, are they actually going to start using? I don't think Russia is going to. I don't think so. I don't think Russia's going to use.
The mistake people make is they assume nuke means 100 megaton ICBMs.
Doesn't happen. Even strategic nuclear weapons, I think, would be
nuclear artillery.
Unbelievable. Depleted uranium is different than firing nukes.
No, I'm talking about explosives. I'm talking about nucleer shells. I'm talking about.
I don't think they're going to be firing nuclear shells. I don't think they'll be firing small yield. No Davy Crockett's. No exotic miniature nuclear arms. I don't think that'll happen. That would be I don't even think China. I don't think anybody would support Russia in those types of actions.
I disagree.
You think that China would support Russia? You think that?
Yes, hands down.
Wow.
I think the U.S. has already lost its position. Brazil and China just announced that they're going to be trading outside of U.S. dollars. Yes. China's brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Like the U.S. is in such a fractured position right now that I'm pretty sure China's just going to be like, sucks to be you, United States.
I don't think it's about being in a fractured position. I think it's about, I don't think anybody wants to be in a country where people are shooting nuclear weapons, including China and everybody else in the world.
But I think it's going to be in Ukraine. This is what I'm saying. The U.S. will not. This was brought up by I think it was an EU politician. He said if Russia uses lower yield nukes in Ukraine, the West will not respond with similar nuclear weapons or greater.
Why would? Who cares what a EU politician says though?
He said, no, who was this? It was like a UN guy or something.
I don't care who it is. If it wasn't the U.S. president, UN has no fucking. Yeah,
no one is going to risk. What did he say? He says no one's going to risk like Warsaw for Kiev. No one. If Vladimir Putin escalates the conflict in Ukraine, Western forces will not escalate to the point where they would put their home countries at risk.
So then, why do you think that China would put themselves at risk by allying with Russia? I'm not understanding. Isn't that what he just said, or did I mishear what Tim Pool was saying? Like he's convinced that China will side with Russia, but then he's also convinced that the West won't retaliate against Russia because it would engage in nuclear war. Maybe I'm just misinterpreting something that's being said, but it doesn't really make sense to what he's saying to me. Like, why would you assume one and not the other?
They will keep the conflict in Ukraine.
Well, of course, but Ukraine's not a NATO country, so all we'll do is send stuff to help. But we're not going to be putting troops there. We're not going to be flying planes over there.
What they were saying is that if Putin uses nukes in Ukraine, the West will not fire nukes on Russia in return.
Fire nukes on Russia in return? I don't believe so. But wasn't Biden's initial claim that we'd be destroying like their fleet in the Black Sea or something if they were doing?
Well, we took out their flagship.
Yeah, I mean, but again, I wouldn't look to a UN or an EU politician to speak on behalf of the U.S. military or what the U.S. is willing to do, because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters, right?
I agree with your principle that countries shouldn't be invading and colonizing territory, but then I look at what the U.S. did the last 20 years in Iraq.
We haven't done anything even remotely similar. We didn't take any territory.
They're not on our border. We have a puppet state in Iraq. We have corporations set up in Libya like
Iraq holds their own elections. Iraq is its own country. We didn't take any territory from them. We didn't declare any of this. Like, this is now part of the United States. It's a totally different scenario from what's happening in Ukraine and Russia.
We removed the Ba'ath Party from power, which caused ISIS to appear. But I mean, you could say it's legit, but it's a puppet state.
I'm not saying it's legit, but I don't think they can call it a puppet state. I don't think it's fair. They hold their own elections. They are their own country. We might not like it. We did remove Saddam Hussein. We did ban the Ba'ath Party from reforming. That is true. But we didn't we didn't come in and say, like, we're going to carve off this part as like New Connecticut.
Right.
It's part of the United States now. That's an insane thing to do.
I don't think Connecticut needs anything more. If we're going to give something to somebody, let's give Rhode Island a little bit more. New Rhode Island, because holy fuck, is that place small. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's an insane thing to do. We haven't done that. Russia went into Ukraine and they took territory. This is Russia now. That hasn't happened in so long. It's an unprecedented action in this age, post-91, post-Soviet Union. That's insane.
Yeah, I think of it as like after the Soviet Union broke up, the oligarchs split it all up and they took away the warm water port from Russia because they didn't want to be a global hegemon. They were like, no, we're going to give Sevastopol to Ukraine now. Russia's landlocked and they can have their other. And it'd be like in the U.S. if they took the West Coast and took a long strip down the West Coast of the U.S. and gave it to Canada and we had no Pacific access. That at some point the U.S. would be like, this is insane and we're going to invade and take Pacific access. And that's where I see the Russians coming from.
Well, how? They recognize the border. That's the country. You might not like it, but
it's just de facto. Like
it's not de facto. It'd be like, what if Canada was like, we really want Alaska? This is bullshit. It's not even connected to the U.S. We're going to take this. You can't do that. That's the border.
Try.
They could try.
De facto, if we didn't have West Coast access.
I wish they'd fucking try.
The Canadians.
God, I would just love to win a war against Canada.
And it would give us pretext to seize Canada. We would end up taking Canada and annexing it into the United States.
No more land acknowledgements.
The way we did with Libya, the way we invaded, overthrew Gaddafi.
We did that, but we did that with authorization through fucking through NATO and even through the UN. I'm pretty sure Gaddafi was so bad. I think even China would like abstain from voting no on that one. But again, I'm just saying that here's what I'm trying to say. There's something very unique in particular. I'm not saying that like because I know a bunch of people swaying out probably saying, oh, he wants Iraq and Afghanistan, blah, blah. I'm not saying those invasions were good. I'm not saying our occupation was good. But I'm saying there's something fundamentally different from invading a country and taking territory and saying this land is mine now. Even in Iraq, even in Afghanistan, where we were for 7,000 years, we didn't actually say this is U.S. territory now. Right? There were people there. They ran. They did their elections. They did their things. Eventually, we left. But like, it's not U.S. territory. Whereas that has to happen with Crimea. And
You know,
Ukraine.
we almost took Mexico. I was watching this documentary on, what was it, the Mexican-American War. And then we, like, Americans were actually in favor of just taking it. And we won. But then the president at the time, I can't remember who it was, Polk or something. He was like, nah, Mexico can stay Mexico.
The tactic the liberal economic order has been using is
But we
corporate.
took Texas and stuff.
It's corporate.
Well, why does that necessarily matter? Are we talking about like a modern history? I imagine that was at least 10 years ago. Like, I mean, what are we talking about here, you know? What the fuck? Yeah, but seriously, what the fuck are we talking about? Oh, wow, it's in a spot I can't shoot at. It's fucking incredible. This seems a little different, no?
Colonization.
California.
They took out Gaddafi, set up the U.S. dollar, and all these American corporations like Sidney Blumenthal's Osprey Global Solutions. Hillary made sure that he got his defense contract in Libya. So they say, oh no, we're not taking that land, but it is profiting us massively because we have it set up as a corporate.
Sure, I mean everything profits us, but I mean that's a fundamentally different thing again from like taking the land and being like we're gonna.
I would argue that colonizing corporately overseas is much worse than taking a piece of land on your border.
But it's still way different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is definitely different. I don't know what is worse. Having, I don't know, whatever. Okay.
It's different, yeah.
It's different than like this is U.S. land that we're now administering legally, and this is our land now. It's
But
weird.
if you legally say it's okay to invade and take something over, it doesn't make it okay to invade and take it over just because you said it was legal.
You guys are going in circles.
Yeah, okay.
Let's jump to domestic story.
We're going in spirals, Tim.
Spirals. All right, here we go.
Forward.
From the
haven't
Daily
made death
Mail.
threats yet. Yeah, okay.
NYPD orders full mobilization plan. All uniformed officers are on standby as extra manpower is deployed to ring of steel around Manhattan's DA's office amid fears of violence after Trump's indictment. I really don't think there's that New York City is MAGA country enough to the point that they have to worry about a bunch of Trump supporters showing up to the Manhattan DA's office.
I mean, what's the argument then that it's all like that it's all just like a big silly goosery like the political statement that they because like okay, so they're saying the NYPD has a mobilization plan. All uniforms are on standby as extra manpower. So they said like, hey guys, in case something is going on, we have the extra people at standby. That sounds reasonable to me. It's not saying that they're putting everybody in function or that they're going to spend a bunch of money on it more than anything else. It's just like, hey, we put a plan in place in case a thing happened, in case the guy who did January 6th, has a bit of a problem here. In case the guy who was saying that the election was rigged and we need a fight to take it back, has people. Like, yeah, New York is more progressive. I would say you'd be surprised. As you've gone, it's like pretty much anywhere but New York City, which is pretty much most of New York. I don't know number-wise or proportionality of people, because I think that there's 8 or 9 million people in New York. Am I wrong? There has to be more. I think New York City. I don't know. Whatever. So I think 8.4 million. Is that New York or New York City? I guess it's entirety of New York. In New York State, there's almost 20 million, 19.84 in New York, and then in New York City, there's like half, so like roughly half of that, 8.4 million. So we'll say like 45%, 40%. It's good to have a plan, but like, what's the argument that they shouldn't do it? They should definitely do it. It's just a plan. You should be prepared. Learn that in the Boy Scouts. Not to make too many assumptions, but considering Tim Pool seems to engage a little bit in more conservative conspiracy-esque type rhetoric from what I'm hearing here. Is he trying to suggest, or maybe I'm just reading too much into it, he's trying to suggest that it's all just like a ploy to make Trump look worse or something? I think it's always good to have a plan, though. Okay, that's why we made Plan B. Because that ain't my kid. I'm just kidding. I'm fucking around.
I'm just worried they're going to march them all down into the tunnels for drills next. And then we know what happens. You seen The Dark Knight Rises?
Oh, that's right. And then they're going to release all the inmates from their jails. Oh, man.
I've seen The Warriors. Yeah, jeez.
Well, I wonder what New York would be like if, like, I don't know, 8,000 people convicted felons were just released.
All those COVID patients going to come crawling out of the old person's homes. The power electric chairs.
They live underground.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyway, I find this funny because let me see if I have this tweet somewhere. Where is this?
I think people are just like so paranoid they just don't want to risk it, right? Like January 6th was such a disaster, and it was a disaster at like multiple levels of failing to be ready for what was going to happen. I think for New York, they're probably saying like better safe than sorry, because oh my God, if something got repeated where they weren't ready, it's just going to look so bad on everybody involved.
Sure. We have this video coming out of Tennessee where a bunch of leftists stormed the Capitol and fought with police.
Oh shit.
They actually made their way into the chamber.
Well, that's where I'm going to go piss. So. Let's get this back in business.
In what conservatives are calling an insurrection. So, I mean, that's basically it. Look, they're finding the cops and people are getting arrested.
Crazy stuff.
And it happened in Kentucky, too. But like this happens all the time. I mean, it's funny. There were numerous protests by the left where they actually were banging on the doors of the Supreme Court, or actually went inside to the congressional buildings and shut down legislative sessions, and they were never considered that big of a deal. And even Well,
did the president of the United States say that the election was stolen from them and rile them up and say that we need to fight back against this tyranny? And yeah, I'm just wondering. Maybe you're right. Maybe we need to do more enforcement against these other places, but I don't think that anything is quite the same as January 6th, at least not in modern history.
Right now, it's like the media's not covering this like it's that big of a deal to shut down your capital. State capitals, I guess, don't matter. I don't know what.
Well, it matters, but just how much does it matter?
The media is covering it, right? That was a video by the media, right?
Yeah, someone posted it. Was Kelsey
Greg
Gibbs? Yeah, Kelsey Gibbs posted it and then deleted it. Greg Price got a copy of it and reposted it, and then maybe she reposted it again. It looked like it really wasn't super violent. I don't think anyone got hurt. I can't
typically,
tell.
what we mean when we say like the news doesn't cover it is that, like, sure, local outlets may run the story, but is it getting headline attention? Is it getting primetime attention?
Does it need to? I'm curious. Like, is it as big of a deal?
It didn't shut down the authorization of the new president of the United States, which was what January 6th was. They were trying to like slow or stop the counting of the votes to get Biden elected or something like that. So it was like a federal election. That was what made that one such a big deal. Plus, it was high profile.
Yeah, it was kind of goaded on by our president. I think it was a big deal too.
He did say Donald Trump was involved in setting it up directly. You know, not the violence,
he said
but
peacefully march to listen to politicians.
Yeah, just getting the people in the vicinity. He was part of that.
I think it was when he said for months that they were going to steal our election from us and we need to fight like hell to keep it. I think it was more of that than the march peacefully thing. But
he said march peacefully, and there was a permitted rally at the Capitol.
Okay. How can you go? Okay, we're backing up a little bit.
Yeah,
How can you take the one thing that Biden said on stage one time as definitive proof that he was actually trying to withhold aid, but the
he literally said he did,
and Trump literally said that we need to fight like hell.
Trump did not say storm the Capitol.
He didn't say storm the Capitol in those exact words.
And Biden
but he
said
said
in
we
the
need to
exact
fight
words
like hell. He said we need to fight like. What does fight mean?
If
does
Joe
it mean
Biden said,
be obese and stand at the Capitol?
Yeah, it's not an argument. If Joe Biden said on stage, could you imagine if I told this guy I did this, and everyone went, oh. No, he literally said he did a thing. And we're like, hey, if he said he did that, we should investigate. Trump said fight, and then later, now go march peacefully. It's like, well, those are metaphors. The left says fight all the time. We don't mean physically. We mean spiritually. We mean politically.
But he was also saying that the election was stolen from him, even though it was objectively not stolen from him. And then kept saying fight. Like, the context matters, right? If I say, like, guys, fight like hell when you're playing football. If I'm a football coach and I'm like, guys, fight like hell, you're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna play really well by the rules. If I go, the election was stolen from me, fight like hell, I might go, we gotta overthrow the government. Might be a little different. This might be a little slightly different.
That was followed up by months of saying that, like, they're going to steal the election from you. You have to fight to save your country. Like, you don't think that type of rhetoric can directly lead to people saying, like, our election is being stolen, like Trump said, is being stolen, and we need to fight, like, go to the Capitol and fight to save our country?
In that line, do you blame trans activists for calling for fighting when this person went and shot up a church or a grade school?
What? Well, because the context matters. So, like, if there was a trans activist that said go shoot up a school, like, that's horrible. Like, absolutely not. Those people are fucking scumbags. But usually when trans people are like, oh, we need to fight for our rights, they're talking about, like, making sure that legislation doesn't get passed to rob them of their rights. We're not talking about the same thing. I mean, this just feels like a weaponization of, like, a horror. Okay, let me not get too much into, like, that assumption from Tim Pool's perspective. It's just not the same thing. There's a difference between constantly saying the election is stolen from me and that, like, the Democrats are evil. Like, let's say how, like, that's how long it's been. The Democrats are evil. They're terrible people. They want to fucking take away your freedoms. They want to do this, communism, socialism, blah blah blah. And if I lose, then it's all conspiracy theory, and you need to fight, and you need to take it back. There's a difference between saying that and saying we need to fight for trans rights. Those are just two very different things. Once again, it's bizarre. These comparisons are really just bad. Like, they're so bad. I can see why people don't like Tim Pool. Like, they're just dog shit comparisons.
For the trans shooter?
Yeah. I mean, they've been saying it's genocide nonstop over and over again, and they've been saying get up weapons and you have to fight.
Yeah, but I don't know why.
What are you talking about? Well, yeah, first of all, I think that some of the trans genocide might be disproportionate, but you do literally have Michael Knowles talk about we need to, like, fucking get rid of trans people or whatever. Let me see what he exactly said. I don't want to be misquoted and people to be an asshole. But he said we need to it must be eradicated from public life. Like, that's pretty heavy. That's a pretty heavy statement to make. So I'm just saying, I'm putting this here.
I don't know why that shooter did the shooting. Do you?
So the police said there's a manifesto, and that the working theory is it's related to the identity of the shooter.
Okay, you said two. Wait. You said two totally different things. Are the police saying that it was?
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to be very specific.
Yeah. I'd be curious because I read 4 different articles. I was trying to find out was anything from this manifesto released. I know the media is saying they should release it.
They will
My
release
understanding
it.
is the police has not commented on the material in the manifesto yet. What did they say about it specifically?
It was the police chief, I guess. He was asked specifically, did the gender identity of the shooter play a role? And he says the theory is that is the case.
That's definitely. I mean, I imagine it would. What is that? They should release the manifesto. I don't know why they're not. You know what? In all honesty, they might. So I think that they should. Actually, maybe they shouldn't. But they also shouldn't release any manifesto then. Because here's the thing. We always, there are people who will commit these atrocities, and part of it is so that they get to stay famous, right? And so we put their name out there, we put their picture, we're like, oh, such and such did such and such, and it's like this whole thing, and then it glorifies that person and puts them in the media cycle, and it gives them 15 minutes of fame, and it motivates more people that are fucking crazy, that don't care about killing people, but just want to be famous for 2 seconds, right? So maybe they're not releasing it, because then it just releases whatever ideology that they're trying to push. But we should make that a standard for everybody then. Then we should make that a standard for everybody. Okay. So
We're investigating, et cetera, et cetera.
I heard that.
That's actually what he said.
Okay, I don't know what that means. Because it could mean what you're saying. So let's say that in the manifesto they're right. They're saying things like, I've been watching a whole bunch of YouTube commentators like Vosh saying that there is a trans genocide and I need to go and take action to prevent that. Then I would say that's horrible. And people that are saying, actually, fuck, even if they didn't say that, the people that are saying there's a trans genocide we need to fight should be held accountable. I think that's a bad thing. If you believe in stochastic terrorism, I think that that's definitely that. But if it's something like where the person is like, oh, like I'm trans and people in my life don't accept me, I'm gonna go shit up a school, I think that's meaningfully different than inspired by rhetoric from people calling for violence, right?
sure, I get what you're saying.
So when we see these protests from far leftists, like at the Capitol, like in Kentucky and Tennessee,
this all wrong?
do you think the storming of those capitals is the fault of people like Vosh saying you got to take? I don't know if Vosh ever said that.
My
but
understanding is
activists.
the storming of those capitals was for gun reform.
Kentucky was trans rights. They were holding up trans rights signs.
Was it trans rights?
Absolutely.
I thought they were
One guy
doing
was
it in
dressed in the
response
flag.
to the shooting.
Sure, but no. Kentucky was that they're banning. I think it was Kentucky, right? That they're banning.
It might have been in
sex changes
Kentucky
kids.
for Tennessee. I think it was for firearms, right?
Tennessee was firearms, but it overlapped with that issue. It was primarily a firearms protest. So let's just say Kentucky, the storming of the Capitol there, where they were in the gallery and they're being arrested and they're holding up trans signs. Do you think the suspense of that, the inhibition of that legislative session and the storming of that Capitol is the result, is the fault of leftist activists saying take up arms and go fight?
Sure. If somebody is storming buildings, I think they should be held legally accountable. They're trespassing. They absolutely should be. And I think that people that are using alarmist rhetoric to get people to go and fight, whether that's Donald Trump or whether that's far left people on YouTube,
Did Vosh
should
do
also
that?
be. He does it all the time. It's one of the things. Yeah, of course.
You got to be careful
Well, hold
about
on,
alarmist
because
rhetoric.
Hassan does it, but he says only in video games.
Well, unless it's an imminent call, like vague calls like, hey, go do this thing, that's not illegal. That's protected First Amendment. But if you say on this day at this time, do this thing, then that's an imminent threat. I understand that's illegal under the First Amendment.
Okay, we're talking about morality more than anything else. But like what I'm saying is like if it's fight for your trans rights, there's a difference between saying that and like a fight because the election is stolen from me and the world's coming to a fucking end and the government's lying to you and Democrats are evil. A little bit different, I'd say. Obviously, if you call for any of that stuff. But like I would say that like the trans genocide thing's still disproportionate. I could see why there's some people who would maybe say that because of like what Michael Knowles was saying. But I would also, again, I would say that like it's not good to be that exaggeratory. And that's what a lot of times that's the problem with media. I was talking before how about there's so much information in our faces and it can distress us, but there's also a factor of people who make content, and I'm part of this as well. People who make content have a vested interest in sensationalizing content. And I do my best to not do that. And I don't think I do that, but there are people who do. And so, like, when I saw that Michael Knowles thing, I interpreted it as he wants to get rid of the ideology. He's not trying to actually kill trans people. Some people might actually interpret it as like he wants to call violence and kill trans people. Some people know that that's not what is happening, but is saying that because it looks better on a YouTube thumbnail. And that's one of those things where, like, that's where we kind of have to get into like the right situation. I would especially like it's just something to keep in mind because those are two very different things. And stoking these flames is not something that you should be doing. And I know that it pulls views for people, but I'm telling you, like, we're about to hit like a fucking revolution here where people are really tired of itching their nose. People are getting tired of like the sensationalized like YouTube content, and there's going to be a snap. It's going to happen very quickly and very suddenly where you're going to see a lot of people who are sensationalizing shit. They're going to fall by the wayside, and you're going to be people who are just like fucking normal as fuck. Like they're going to start taking more prevalence in the content. So if you want to maintain relevance as a content creator, maybe chill the fuck out. But even outside of that, you just shouldn't be doing this thing just for attention. Because it's gay. No, it's stupid. Sorry, I'm just being silly. Because it's just wrong. It's just wrong to sensationalize and rile people up. You know, I don't want people to listen to my content and start getting like super anxious. Like, oh fuck, I don't want you to what the fuck? This guy just stole 6 kills, bro. Fuck, dude, he's taking my last hits. I don't want people to engage in my content and be like scared. You know, I'd rather people engage in my content and be like, oh, like, okay, interesting. I was hoping to get all the kills instead of him getting some, because I wonder what happens if you get them all. But
the issue that I have is a general alarmist rhetoric.
Precedent.
Where there's a lot of people saying that there's a trans genocide incoming, so buy firearms. That feels a little bit like great replacement rhetoric, except on the left instead of the right to me. Where people on the right sometimes will say things like, immigrants are invading, they're taking everything, you need to buy firearms to protect yourself from spooky immigrants that are replacing white people. That feels similar to people saying there's a trans genocide, buy firearms because Republicans are going to take your rights away.
I think it's a little different. Because like no, there's no immigrant going, I'm going to come over here and fucking kill everybody. There are some people who do that. But then there are some people who are here who do that. But there's no like ideologically driven. Most people who are immigrants coming here just want to make more money and have a better life. But I have seen conservatives like literally use incredibly like, I mean, like we're calling people like Jeffrey Marsh a fucking groomer because they're weird. And people, well, they're actively asking kids to do this. Show me the video where they explicitly say, kids, come to my Patreon. Because the videos I've seen were never come to my Patreon. There's one video where they're like, oh, how to separate from your parents. But they're not exclusively talking about kids. They're probably talking about LGBTQ adults when it comes to like that aren't accepting of their fucking ideology. You know, you can dislike Jeffrey Marsh all you want. They're fucking weird to me. But at the end of the day, this is just a person who probably grew up with an identity issue and just trying to provide resources to people that were like him when they grew up, you know. But we were being so disproportionate, calling everybody fucking groomers, which is basically calling them like child groomers and rapists, saying that we need to like eradicate the ideology, making that like front and center of like of what's going on right now is all gay shit when nobody gives a fuck about any actual real issue. Like they're not talking about real issues. Like it's a little different from some fucking Hispanic guy like, I just want to work. It's a little bit different. So I don't want to downplay and call it exactly the same. There are people who are exacerbating tensions. Agree, they shouldn't be doing that, especially if they don't have like an emotional interest in something. I think that there's something kind of like dishonest about somebody who doesn't have like a personal vested interest in something getting worked up. Like I'm not trans, and I don't really know people. I know some people who are trans, but I don't know them any like deeply. I don't know somebody who's deeply affected by it. So when I talk about trans issues, I don't get super riled up and go fucking ballistic. Obviously, when it comes to other topics, I do. Like sexual assault is a little different, but there are some people who, and you could never know. But it seems like there are some people who don't have personal relationships with these ideologies or these particular issues, but they act as if they do, and it seems fake to me. When they like, you're like, oh fuck, all this is happening, but they don't really have like an invested interest in these things. So, yeah,
that type of like any type of rhetoric that is basically stating that like your life is on the line by a gun, in my opinion, is like very, very, very unhealthy for the state of the country.
I agree. I don't like the metaphor fight for your rights. It's been around my entire life. You got to fight for your rights. And in the United States, they literally did 250 years ago. And throughout the ages, they have had.
I think that rhetoric is fine when the other LGBTQ people are getting threatened to lose their ability to get fucking married. Like, yes, fight for your rights. Don't hurt anybody, but fight for your rights. Go fucking vote. Right? I don't have a problem with that. But again, like that's a little bit different than what's, you know, because that's an actual thing until we codified gay marriage. Like once they got rid of abortion, once they got rid of the standard of that, Ted Cruz and other Republicans were talking about how they want to remove gay people's ability to get married in every state. It's like, well, state choice. No, it's separation of church and state. Like, you're wrong. So, like, yeah, you fight for your rights. Just don't get violent about it, obviously. It's like more of a social fight. You know, the pen is greater than the sword. Obviously, don't pick up a gun to shoot kids. That's horrible.
To do that. They have done it literally with weapons. And so the idea that we got into a fight yesterday. Oh, you mean you're arguing? That's not a real, like, what does fight even mean? I heard Elizabeth Warren say it.
Come on, come on.
Well, I mean, that's what we're talking about, the word fighting.
No,
like, if you say go fight for your right, are you really encouraging violence?
Now we're just getting into semantics. My wife and I will fight sometimes. And, like, yeah, it's an argument, but it's like a fight. So if she's like, are we fighting right now? She'll do that sometimes. Like, I'll get a little stern with her. Because sometimes I can just be a little stern. And, like, I don't even mean to be. Or sometimes I can be kind of an asshole. I'm not going to lie. Like, I can be a little bit of a dick. And she's like, are we fighting right now? I'll be like, no. And then I'll be like, okay. Take a deep breath. Like, we're not hitting each other. It's just like we're like, you know, one of us did something to the other person or thought one blah 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 blah. All typical fucking relationship bullshit. Like, what the fuck? This guy's weird. This guy's like disproportionate in his own sense. Like, what the fuck's happening? Jesus Christ. I like how Tim is saying no.
Okay, fine. But like, typically, every political organization says fight for your rights, and they're not implying physical violence. They're implying a struggle against a political regime to encourage people to vote and to get in politicians and get policy in place.
So if someone's on a heavy dose of psychoactives and they hear that and they go fight physically, you got to put it on the person. You got to blame the person that fought, not the person that said go fight.
Is he like disagreeing with himself from like 2 seconds before? Who is this guy? What the fuck? This guy's so weird. I feel like he just doesn't know what he's saying anymore.
I think we have to have like a more holistic, intelligent view of this. What I would say is that you have to look at the totality of rhetoric and you got to ask, where does it lead? If somebody is saying like, listen, lawmakers are coming for your rights, you guys need to fight for your rights, okay? Like we got to do that. That's fine, whatever. But if somebody's saying like, you are being eliminated from this country, people are trying to genocide you, they're going to use whatever means possible to take you out. You need to get armed, you need to train, you need to be ready for when these people come to town. Like that's like, okay.
All right, I'll talk about Andrew Tate on house arrest in a little bit. I'll see if somebody makes a video about it. But right now, I don't care.
Fuck.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Like obviously he's going to get taken out. They probably just couldn't re-up the 30-day extension, so they put him in house arrest and say like that's pretty much it. Doesn't mean that the trial's over in any capacity.
You have to look at the totality of the rhetoric. It's not just like a one statement. It's like how is it being presented all
What we are seeing with these posters like Trans Day of Vengeance, they had pictures of guns on it.
What is that?
It's being accompanied by
I didn't even know
posters
that was a thing.
that say, take up your arms, no one is coming to save you. And videos of these activists saying quite literally to beat people. Did you see that one? They got like a club made of a curtain rod and they're like, beat them, hurt them.
Although I'd say we have to be really careful about, because on how big some of these, like for some of these trans organizations that people are obsessing over, the Trans Day of Vengeance, and then there was another one like the Trans Resistance something network or whatever.
Trans Radical Activist Network.
Yeah, like I don't even know if these things exist. Like I see a lot of, like I know Fox News,
I think it had a few thousand followers.
yeah, it had like, well on Twitter, like that.
But they're the ones organizing the event in DC tomorrow.
Yeah, but I'm curious how many people are going to even show up to that. Because I looked at that page and it's like a WordPress page with like 2 links.
But that's what it always is.
And the Twitter page has like 300 followers.
And you'll
with no
get-
names attached.
You'll get a few hundred people show up.
I bet it's a Russian op.
Oh yeah, Russia. I mean, honestly,
Maybe.
I would not be surprised if it was Russia or China or both.
Oh, wait, did they cancel it? Oh, apparently they canceled the April 1st thing. April
Oh,
Fools.
really? April Fools.
Breaking news brought to you on the Tim Cast podcast.
What was the April 1st thing?
Trans Day of Vengeance.
Oh, they canceled it.
What a horrible name.
I know.
Where did you get that from? Where was that news?
Damn.
Well, that's good. They did the right thing. I think that was definitely being
this is from
construed as
them.
a violent call. So that
Well, it sounds like a bunch of fucking crazy online people that were like, we should do this, and then they realized nobody gave it a fuck, so they just canceled it. So it sounds like to me, at least. Could be wrong about that, but
I think that was the right move.
The organization says this action is not happening due to credible threat to life and safety. Oh wow.
I think fight for your rights. Okay, vengeance starts to get a little bit weird though.
Revenge. Also,
Bad
the word
outfits.
revenge is. I don't like the word revenge because can you have peaceful revenge? I guess you can. Watching someone fail is like a form of revenge. If you're like me not doing any.
Does this guy just do drugs and then talk? Like I don't know. What's his value in the show? I'm not trying to be rude. I don't want him to get fired or anything. Not that I'd have that power, but like what the fuck? Like I just feel like he just kind of starts talking and then he says a whole lot of nothing. I don't know. Sorry. What the fuck? Okay.
I would say that's an unconventional use of the word though.
Oh, maybe it was an April Fool's joke. Maybe.
Vengeance. That implies past wrongdoing. I do think it's absolutely insane that after what happened on Monday, the media's response to this was very, very much like, oh, the poor trans community. Whereas they typically don't do that for any other mass shooting. They don't.
Well, that's
they don't
because
lament
what are the other mass
ideology.
shootings? Usually like white dudes. Like
Yeah, but when they're
like
poor
white
white
people.
guys.
but no, I mean like even
True.
the other trans shooters, right? With like Aberdeen, Colorado Springs, Denver, they didn't come out and say the same thing. It's like this one they did. Which
yeah,
is
but
like
I
a
think
weird reaction.
I think for this one, there's
Did
a
they
pretty
say-
big deal about it being a trans person, which I don't think it was necessarily made as big a deal for the past one. So, and then I think that the temperature is up really high right now. Because apparently Republicans have nothing else to talk about but trans people, so we're like all focused and fixated on trans people right now. So when a shooting happens,
True.
with a
I don't
trans
think it's
person-
Republicans. I think it's both Republicans and Democrats.
Republican.
No, it's mostly just Republicans talking about it. Democrats will bring it up as a singular policy sometimes. But like honestly, like Republicans just don't seem to have anything else to talk about. And I feel like the base has to be fucking tired of it. It's like they have to be tired of it. Like it's all LGBTQ fucking fear mongering. Like it's psychotic, honestly. Like talk about a real fucking issue.
Republicans are obsessed with trans people right now.
But Democrats are, putting books like genderqueer in schools, or I should say schools are putting those in place. Loudoun County, we saw a Republican get elected in Virginia primarily because of what happened in Loudoun County, which is literally 2 seconds. You get in the car, you drive 20 seconds, you're in Loudoun. And it's because these schools, they had sexual assaults. They had these books depicting graphic things for kids. And then when parents...
Were the sexual assaults have tied to LGBTQ people? Like what is like they had sexual assault. What does that mean? Like why did they have sexual assaults? Was it sexual assault day? Like what like I'm just saying, like he didn't say that there are sexual assaults being permitted by people like trans people. If there was one, I would imagine it probably wasn't a trans person, probably somebody pretending to be trans and saying like, oh, I'm a trans girl, going into like the girls' locker room and like fucking raping a girl. Because that's a lot of the fear. It's like, oh, I don't want them in the bathroom because what if a guy pretends to be a trans woman and goes in the bathroom and rapes my kid, right? I just, I want to be careful with the language here.
Parents wanted something done about it. Democrats called them bigots and ignored the problem, so they turned to Republicans. Republicans embraced it.
Yeah, but isn't this like what our school boards are for? Like, don't you go to your school meetings, you say, we don't want this here, and then you talk to the superintendent?
Have you watched those meetings?
Some of them, but
When
not
the parents
all of
go
them.
and present the books, they get kicked out or silenced and told they can't speak about it.
For all of them?
All? I didn't say all of them.
Well, because I can imagine it happening at like one or two
when
meetings.
Matt
But here's my
Walsh
issue.
wanted to speak in Loudoun County, they changed the rules so that he wasn't allowed to, so he had to rent a basement apartment to be able to speak.
Was Matt Walsh a resident of that county?
No, and you didn't need to be. Anyone was allowed to speak at these meetings about issues. So when they found out a prominent conservative was coming, they changed the rule to bar him from coming. So he had to become a resident. That was not a rule normally.
Do you think that might be fair?
It is absolutely fair that someone in California can pay AOC $3,000 to help her win her campaign. It's absolutely fair that in a Virginia gubernatorial election, someone from, where does he live, Tennessee, comes over and says, like, here are my thoughts on this matter and why it's important. To change the rules to bar it,
I think but those are federal level things that we're talking about generally. Not the governor one, but like the AOC one. But
I wonder what the books are. I just wonder, there's a lot of questions. Like, obviously you shouldn't be having inappropriate material to kids, but I wonder if it is inappropriate. I literally had my teacher say, hey, would you like to read this to class, Dan? And then that page had the N-word 3 times, and I'm like, I would not, right? And we don't ban those, right? I just wonder what is the nature of them. How old does who are the books for? Is it in a library, or is it for the school, right? Because those can be like two different things. Is it permitted reading? Like, what is the reading? I don't know the specifics of it because I never, like, when we say these things, so like there's never too much explicit nature in it. I think there was one, and I don't remember the specifics, but where it was just like a school that the library was attached to the school, but it wasn't like the school library, and they just happened to have in the library a book that was about gender, but it wasn't like for kids in some capacity. It was just for it was just there. It was just in the library, you know, because the library is open to anybody. You should go to your library, guys. You go to your public library. You know, it's so up in the air. Like, there's probably some good arguments from conservatives for this stuff, but a lot of it's just like we're at a point now where, like, a school near me, they wanted to not have an LGBTQ flag hanging up, and so like that was it. Oh, sorry, it had the Black Lives Matter thing attached to it. They're like, this is wrong, and then like the fucking the principal left over because the principal's openly gay supporting it. It was like a whole big deal. And it was a literal nothing burger. Like, kids should be able to I don't believe in like deep fucking gender theory for 4th graders or anything, but a 4th grader should be able to be mature enough to understand what a gay person is and a trans person is. It's not that big of a deal. So I mean, it's a lot of this stuff is like very up in the air.
Don't you think it might be a little bit different? Like, let's say that you've got like a...
Let's say you've got like a city...
Full stop.
Okay. Outside the federal thing. Local Democrats raise money out of state all the time.
Sure, I'm saying that if you have like local superintendent meetings, if I go to my child's school to have a conversation about the curriculum with the teachers and there are other parents there, if I started to see people show up from like California or Wyoming, we're from Nebraska, like, I'd be like, what? Like, I don't know why you guys are here right now. That would make me really uncomfortable.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So if it was the case that, like, it might have been the case, and I don't know for the Matt Walsh, I don't know in particular, but it might have been the case that there wasn't a law in the books for that because it's just something that's never come up before. But if it is going to be a thing, then I can understand, like, yeah, you don't need to be at these meetings. This isn't like your political process. This is a very local level thing.
Well, so to go back to the main point, to put it simply, I suppose, Loudoun County was a flashpoint where parents were not being listened to. They were protesting. I remember we went down to Catoctin Skate Park. We saw parents outside tabling being like, when we go to these meetings, they won't listen to us. We need change. And that was a huge rallying cry that gets a Republican elected. So Republicans are looking at this and they're hearing parents say, when the COVID lockdown stuff happened and we heard what these teachers were telling our kids, we were shocked. Kids? And when we tried to get these things changed, they resisted. There's one parent's getting sued by the teachers.
Well, what is the thing? I just have to know what the thing is that they're complaining about. I feel like you have to qualify that here.
What are they gonna, it's like teachers union or whatever, filed a lawsuit against them because they asked for records on what's being taught to their kids.
I feel like I'd be curious to look at that lawsuit because I feel like sometimes look that one up. I'm curious what they're actually being sued for. But my question would be like, can't you just vote out the superintendent? Like, this is part of our local election process. It's like, if you don't like the school superintendent, don't we vote on that? I'm trying to imagine what the resistance is. And now what I'm wondering is there resistance for a majority of parents saying something, or is it a few conservatives that are fighting against this and they're upset that their voice is being drowned out by the other parents that don't agree with them? That'd be my question on this.
I think there's like a big difference between sexual degeneracy and transsexuality.
Well, not for conservatives.
That's the unfortunate thing, is that people are talking about transsexuality as if it's degenerate, and it's not. You waving your unit.
Like the Matt Walsh is just saying that it's all literally that it's like all just a fetish for them. So the book that they apparently banned is this book called Gender Queer, a memoir by Maya Kobabe or something, from the library shelves there. Library, not school library, library. And this book is intended for 18 up. So it sounds like they just had a book in the library and then they're like, teachers were having a fucking meltdown. Who cares? Who gives a shit? Like, it's just an existence of a book. It's different if you're telling that fucking 10-year-olds they have to read it. Maybe that would be inappropriate. but it doesn't seem like a big deal at all. And the conservatives are having a fucking meltdown. This doesn't seem to be reasonable at all. This just seems to be dumb. What? This is weird. Okay. It seems like it's just books being banned because you don't like gay people. It's just like, who cares if an 18-year-old reads a gender ideology book? It's fucking freedom of speech. I mean, this to me, based on that, what I just read, seems like conservatives are trying to restrict freedom of speech from people by banning a book about some fucking trans person. Like, who cares? It's not. Who gives a shit? Like, I think the source material of gender ideology might be a little complicated for a young person, so I wouldn't really want them reading it. But to ban a book from a library, a public library that everybody has access to, and if you're not going there, then you just should take advantage of it more because it's a free resource where you're paying for it anyway in your taxes. That's totally fucking different. What? What the fuck? This is just like a fundamental restriction of freedom of speech.
In front of a child in a bar is degenerate, in my opinion, whether it's at a public park or in a bar where they say it's okay to do it.
Sure. I kind of wonder this. Maybe I'm being a little bit.
You waving your unit in front of a child in a bar is degenerate.
Definitely,
in my opinion, whether it's at a public park or in a bar where they say it's okay to do it.
Sure. I kind of wonder this.
Just, like, not all people who do drag do it sexualized. Like, drag fundamentally is usually like to an extent parodying or really honoring like some kind of a famous singer. And as our music has gotten more sexualized, you see where this is going, right? It's gotten more sexualized, so you're seeing more sexualized drag. But I think I don't really care if a person in drag reads a book to a kid, as long as it's not like their outfit isn't like inappropriate. They're not fucking doing anything inappropriate. I really don't give a shit. Just don't take your kid. Like, that's it. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, a trans person exists, or they're not even trans. Like, a fucking gay person in a dress existing is not going to. If that makes your kid gay, your kid was gay. Oh my god, your kid was very gay. Your kid was just very gay. Okay, and that's okay. You should accept your gay kid. Nothing wrong with gay kids. Okay, they're fine. Just stay away from me, loser. No, I'm just kidding. So who gives a shit? Okay.
Maybe I'm being a little bit unfair here. But I kind of wonder for a lot of parents if the COVID lockdowns were the first time that they ever actually looked at what their kids were reading in school.
Yep.
And a lot of them were like, wait, what's going on here?
Maybe.
And so like the impression is that like, oh my God, all of this crazy stuff's made its way into the school. It's like, well, no, that's been part of a curriculum for probably quite a while. You just never noticed because it was a school you don't actually give a shit what your kid is reading. But that's just a guess. I actually know. But
I think it's true. There were a lot of videos where the kids were on Zoom classrooms and the parents recorded it being like, what are they telling my kids? And then what happened was when these parents came out and started complaining about it, because no one knew what was going on and paid attention, they said, you're lying. It's not true. It's not happening. But it is happening, and it is shocking. And because parents didn't pay attention, this is why I think it's become a major political issue right now.
Sure. All right. What's this?
I don't
think.
think.
Curious.
I couldn't find it.
I honestly don't think so. I don't think that there's anything else that conservatives have to like platform on right now other than like trans bad. I don't think it's that deep. I don't think that there's a whole lot there. Like just I would take it more seriously if they were coming to the table on anything else. They don't come to the table on poverty, on guns, on welfare, on literally any other issue. They don't come to the table on fucking Russia or in Ukraine. What other, like, there's no other issue. It just seems like a distraction, or at least an obsession, more than anything else. It seems like there's nothing else going on. Like, it's just a fucking, like, like, what else? If you had something else you could direct me to, I'd be like, okay, maybe it's just like they're concerned. It doesn't really read that way, because what the fuck else are you talking about? Like, there's nothing there.
Oh fuck! Wow.
Yeah, there was I would need a few minutes.
I always say, this is something that happens. Because I always tell people if you hear something, like, always look it up. I'll hear something like a person was removed from a meeting just because they were asking questions, and then when I later go read the story, it's actually like they were making a ton of noise. They were asked to leave once. It was private property, and then they were escorted off, and then they weren't even sure what was going on. Things always get like twisted, like really hardcore. So I'm always curious when I hear like there's a lawsuit against somebody. Like, what is it actually for?
Well, there's a bunch of these meetings, and the reason is their parents. Is this one from Fox News? They'll try to read, like, they'll be like, hey, we came here to complain about this book and you refuse to listen, so I'm going to read from this book. And then once they do, they go, whoa, you can't read that stuff in here. That's graphic. And they're like, yes, but these are in our schools. That's
Georgia parent reading sexual content from library as school board meeting is cut off inappropriate. Okay, but the problem with this headline instantly, here's what this communicates to me. Whoa, that's inappropriate. So obviously you shouldn't have it in the library. Again, I don't know, maybe conservatives don't know what a library is. A library is for everybody. A parent reading sexual content from a library is not the same thing as a parent reading sexual content from a school library. These are two different things. There is still adult material in libraries. I'm not saying porn. I'm just saying adult material in libraries. There's adult reading in libraries. Libraries aren't exclusive to children. So no offense, but some dumb fuck parent going to a library that is for everybody, picking out an explicit book and reading in front of everybody doesn't mean dick worth a shit to me. What it reads to me is that there are really unintelligent people, no offense, that will look at this and they think that because the word school's in the title, that means that it must be a school library. But guess what? If it was a school library, they would have called it a school library in the title. But this is just a manipulative headlines. And I'm not saying that only Fox does this, but what I'm saying is this is a manipulative headline meant to rile you up. But if somebody with half of a fucking brain and a little bit of skepticism read this, like me, they go, oh, wait, this seems like bullshit. It's just a library. Library. Am I saying it wrong? A library had a fucking book that had that had more explicit material in it. Who cares? Don't have your kids read it. Monitor your children. It's a regular library. You probably had to be 18 or older to take it out in the first place. This is so fucking childish. Like, Jesus Christ.
Problem. Okay. Yeah, I mean, here you go. Here's one of the stories from a year ago. Georgia parent reading sexual content from library at school board meeting is cut off as inappropriate. Don't you find the irony? The concerned parent shot back at the school board member. So this is why people are concerned. I mean, have you seen Genderqueer? Have you seen that book? This is just one book. We had Asra Nomani came in and she brought like 50 different books with various critical race theory, racist ideology, as well as gender ideology stuff. That was like really crazy. Like this book is really crazy. And on Amazon, it's listed as 18 and up only. It's got, it's just got.
There are books that are for 18 and up in the library. Like, we know this, right? I'm just letting you. Like, libraries aren't just for kids. Like, this. I'm just letting you guys know this. We have to acknowledge this fact, right? We have to acknowledge it. Okay, like it's a library. It's not a. They have different reading sections. They have like kids, teens, etc., etc. That'd be like crying because like the book that was for 15-year-olds, like your toddler might be, oh, they might have access to it. We have to ban this book for 12-year-olds because my 4-year-old goes to the library. It's like, okay, who cares?
Aside from the overt sex acts that are in the book that should not be accessible to children, there's a bunch of stuff in there that kids should not be reading about, just in general.
What school is including this? Are they assigning it as
libraries?
Like 6th grade?
I think a few of them had it as curriculum. A lot of them had it as
you think
in the libraries.
Well, okay, so
it's just in the library. He just keeps saying in the library. There's no way. This is so disconnected from reality, right? We have to understand that this is not the same thing. This is like fear. Like it's weird because like what you're saying is like false. Like, are you doing maliciously or do you hate gay people too so much that you want to you want to make it seem like any level of like gay fucking mention needs to be removed? I don't understand it. This is so weird. It's just so fucking bizarre.
Library and school are like those are two very different things. Like, if my 2nd grader can buy this at a Scholastic book fair, that's one thing. But if this is in like the library of like a high school, I think it's a bit different. Like, there are adult sections in libraries at high schools. Like, I don't know.
High school librarian getting attention online for promoting the genderqueer book to students. Blah, blah, blah. I don't need to Google it.
Well, I'd like to see that.
Online for promoting the gender.
I mean, that could be a problem, but that doesn't mean that there's like a systematic issue. That might just be an isolated. A high school librarian is getting online attention after it was revealed that she was promoting a banned book, the controversial LGBTQ memoir. Okay. On TikTok, noting it can be checked out at her library. I don't care. They banned a book that they probably shouldn't have banned, and they said that you can kick it out of my library. Who cares? Oh my God. Hey, we banned this book that it shouldn't have been banned, and then somebody said that they still carry it, and now they're a bad person. Okay. Okay.
Genderqueer book to students. Blah, blah, blah. I don't need to Google it.
It's just a book about somebody's fucking life.
Ron DeSantis actually put together a presentation where actually listed out all the schools that had these books. And the craziest thing was that Nikki Fried, who's like the Democrat trying to run against him, took a screenshot of what he posted and then wrote, posting butt plug porn to own the libs. And it's like, yo, that is a book showing a butt plug next to an anus that they're showing children in grade schools. And that's what the complaint is about.
I just tell me the book and give me more. Like, what are we talking about? If there's a butt plug book being promoted to children, absolutely, that's fucking bizarre. There's no context where that's okay. What's the context of it? I need to find. I need to find more of this. Oral sex, butt plugs, masturbation as a meditation. How to send sexy selfies and how to have anal sex. Welcome to what inside books found in your child's library, school library. Okay, there we go. We're finally getting somewhere with an actual thing that might be a problem. We apologize for the graphic nature of these pictures. You don't expect to see images like this in a newspaper or television. The question is no longer whether there is pornographic material when your kids reach out of school. It's whether or not we do anything about it. I'm going to take this off screen for a second in case it's like some cocks and shit. Gender Queer, a memoir. Okay, this is the memoir that they're referring to. Okay, this is the memoir they're referring to. That they apparently banned from the thing. Is it in a school library? Because the pictures are a little bizarre. If this is the same thing. Genderqueer memoir. Yeah, okay. This seems to be the thing. Yeah, this shouldn't be in a school for kids. This is explicit. There's like literal oral sex happening. Okay. Finally, we like a fucking article that's getting me somewhere. Yeah, it seems like in images of the books found in school. Okay, DeSantis came to the press conference earlier this week with armed facts and images of the books found in school libraries. Florida news stations had to cut their feeds because the images were so graphic. Okay, get that. Adults at home watching the news can't be exposed to anything this graphic, but children are at school. Yeah, okay. So this book seems inappropriate. Specifically with Jesus Christ, holy fuck. Is this part of it? What the fuck? If this is holy shit. What the fuck? Okay, this book should not be in school libraries. I agree. How the fuck did it get in there in the first place? I don't think that this is the left indoctrinating children. Jesus Christ, these people are fucking nuts. I think that some idiot tried to get their book in there with fucking pictures of a person gaping their asshole. Is this really part of the book? Content on gender versus... I don't care about gender versus sex. Like, see, the problem is that they're complaining about the page that just talks about gender versus sex, which is irrelevant to me. I don't care if that's in a school library. You know, I don't think a fucking 10-year-old should be reading that, but like a 16-year-old can have a conversation about gender. I don't give a shit. But the fucking picture here of this guy spreading his asshole, don't forget, everybody's got a butt. After the train has left the station, so to speak, and you've had a chance to wash up or douche back there, you can have an ass load of fun with a healthy heaping of lube. Holy fuck. Applying broad pressure to the outside of the entrance. Circle your butthole with your finger, pausing any time a spot feels extra good. Dip just the tip of your finger inside. Let your anus pull. What the fuck? No way. This is fucking crazy. Is this really part of... This is very inappropriate. If this is real, this book does need to be banned out of school libraries. I agree. Holy moly. The rest of it I don't care about. But what the fuck? Okay. I think that's again. Okay, if this is part, yeah, it makes sense to not have this in school libraries. I agree with that. Okay, for sure. Jesus. Is that really part of the book? I'm gonna keep going.
If even a Democrat gubernatorial candidate is calling it butt plug porn, I think we got a problem.
Sure, I just have to see what we're talking about. Like what you just brought up, was that a librarian in a school or was it just a librarian?
High school librarian.
Oh, high school librarian. And what is the book that's being complained about?
Well, I googled genderqueer.
Is it that they're like telling kids at the library to rent the book, or is it a librarian on Twitter promoting the book?
She went on TikTok and was telling like all of her students or whatever, like, you guys should get this book or something.
Was the book in the
I need to know specifically, is it still in the library or outside of it? Okay, now I'm okay.
Library, or was it just a librarian making a book? Because I feel like these details are really important, right? Like it matters, you know? Like if a librarian is recommending a book, she's like, this is a good book to read.
Yes, they can be found at her school's library.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, then there you go. That's a problem. Okay, now that I've seen what it's about, it's a problem. She shouldn't be having that book in the library. I recant what I had said before. All right. But if it's in a regular library, I don't give a shit. I'm just trying to confirm that this is actually part of the book, because that's fucking nuts. Jesus. Why would you write this book? Holy moly. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Sure, at least. Jeez.
Yeah, so let me pull up the Ron DeSantis one. Because they keep saying he's banning books, and it's like, dude, telling kids you can't have Hustler in the library is not banning books. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Let me see if I can't play this online, so don't pull this up. I can't show you the.
That's for the after hours stream.
Yeah, we can do it there, but I don't even know if people are going to want to see it. So
I want to see it.
Okay, so Illinois school librarian promotes genderqueer to students on TikTok. I don't care about that. Oh, the TikTok is private. I can't even look at it, because if it's a school librarian promoting the book to people that can get it at this, it depends. Like, I don't care. Like if a school librarian, if they're saying like, oh, kids, come get this book that was banned in my school library, that's a problem. If they're just like, this is a good book, but you know, you shouldn't look at it if you're a fucking child, that's different. I wish I could find the TikTok itself to see, but they privated their account, so it doesn't mean that they're. Oh wait, this is.
Hello.
Here we go. We gotta look at it. We gotta see what's going on here.
Hello, it's Miss Corcoran and Abe yet again hanging out in the library talking about the Teen Reader's Choice Award books. Next up, we are talking about this graphic novel memoir by Maya Kobabe called Genderqueer.
Oh no, I think she's losing me.
One of the things I loved about this book is that it's a great window and mirror book.
I mean, it's a mirror into someone's asshole. Why did it stop playing?
Is that it's a great window and mirror book.
It's fucking, of course, it has to have a problem here. Incredible. Holy fuck, everything's going to shit.
Hello, it's Miss Corcoran and Abe yet again hanging out in the library. Next up, we are talking about this graphic novel memoir by Maya Kobabe called Genderqueer. One of the things I loved about this book is that it's a great window and mirror book, meaning people who are questioning their sexual identity and their gender identity are going to view this book as a mirror, a reflective experience of their own. And this book's also a great window for people who want to understand that perspective. It's a wonderful story about someone who's finding out who they are and embracing it. And I love that there are resources and it's super educational. There's nothing I did not like about this book. And
I didn't like the gaping asshole that I saw.
it's actually the top banned and challenged book of 2021, according to the American Library Association. But you can come check out a copy here from the library.
Okay, the book is not appropriate. I'm just saying that. The book is inappropriate, so I can see why they banned that one. It's just like, why wasn't Tim more direct? It felt like he didn't have the information on his own shit. It gives you a definitely new perspective. Like, why not just say, like, there was this book here, and it had graphic pictures of, like, a guy spreading their asshole, or a person spreading their asshole, and, like, fucking somebody sucking somebody's dick. That should not be in there. I agree. It's too much.
I need to see it.
You got to give people a reason to come to the after hours stream.
It just kind of feels like Tim doesn't have a rounded perspective on his own topic. It just sounds like he agreed with it without knowing. Because, like, now I'm like, again, yeah, that book should not be in there. Like, I'm pretty actively against that memoir being in, like, for kids. A kid shouldn't have access to that. Because I looked into it and I was able to make an informed decision. But it sounds like Tim just instantly believed whatever was in the book. I don't know if it was a school or a public library. That's the thing. If it was a school library, that's obviously a problem. If it's a public library, I don't really give a shit. Like, it's public library. But I don't think teens should be fucking reading the book. All right? It's inappropriate. Although, kids had access to things that Dan Snyder made, so maybe they are ready for that. You know, they're fucking licking feet and putting ketchup all over your fucking balls and shit. Nasty-ass fucking goblin.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Butt plugs and books might be it.
Yes. Let me find the video. If I search for it on Twitter... Oh, here we go. Is this it? Ron DeSantis addresses book controversy. I have to pull up on Twitter. Because on Twitter, you have the full thing.
While he's looking about Hillary's emails, you said something was illegal about those. What was
all
the
right, here, let's...
all right, we'll go back to it later.
We won't show this on the stream because YouTube will give us a strike if I show this stuff.
Don't do it.
But, you know, let's...
Jeez.
Yeah, Twitter video player sucks. I'm going to have to reload it. Well, you already saw that much.
I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see what. I'm assuming it was a butt plug?
It was a butt. It was a butthole. Roberto Clemente.
Baseball.
Can you read the tweet for me? What does the tweet say?
It says, yesterday we exposed the book ban hoax. If news stations could not show this explicit material on air, why should it be shown in schools? Oh, is that what it... Okay, so they show genderqueer. There's some overt sex acts. There's two little boys engaging in what they should not be showing children. And then where's the...
I agree.
Let me see. It's not playing audio. There's no sound coming out of this.
Through third grade, and discrimination in a way that an individual by virtue of his or her race, color, sex, or national origin is inherently racist or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously.
What the hell's happening right now?
Here are the books parents found in Florida schools and reported for removal. What was found is shocking. Let's we'll make it bigger and then try and jump in.
This is an on-stream, right?
It's not. The audio is.
Okay. While noting that those are so big, and if none of this causes you to pause, there's another section where a group of boys masturbate together and are pressured to ejaculate into a bottle.
A Mountain Dew bottle.
I used to play that game when I was younger, except we did it on a piece of soggy toast. Whoever came last had to eat it. I always came first, and I was disappointed that I didn't get to eat it. But it just made me, I was so aroused by all the other guys' dicks out that it was a problem. Just kidding. Oh, yeah. I think they should have just read the book and be like, oh, that's bad. And then be like, okay, let's just move on. It is something interesting where, like, people are so adamant about maintaining something like this, or, like being against opposition, that they don't think, like, more intelligently, you know? What are you talking about? I didn't say anything.
Are these ideologically driven
Let's talk
books?
about
Oh, here we go. This is
by
the really bad
Erica
one.
Mullen and Matthew Nolan.
Whoa.
Was found in a Broward County school and contains graphic depictions of how to masturbate for males and females, while also including an entire section.
Yeah.
I could see. Okay, here's the problem. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it because I don't think that there's predatory intention. I think that the perspective of some of these people is like, here's how you like learning to masturbate, so you have like healthy, sexual whatever conversations about masturbation. I don't know if that's appropriate. I also don't know if that's inappropriate necessarily to teach younger people how they can masturbate. Like if you're 16, 15, I don't know. Like I was horny as a kid. So like maybe it's not bad to teach them to masturbate. I remember when I first masturbated, I think I was 13 years old. Like, I coomed. And I remember ejaculating so much, I was afraid of it. And I didn't jerk off for like 6 months because I was so terrified of what just happened. And I thought something was wrong. So like, I think that like maybe there's definitely place for some kind of sexual health education. This seems disproportionate to me. So yeah, that seems like a bit disproportionate to me personally. But I think maybe they're in the right, like well-intentioned, or maybe, it's just fucking uncomfortable.
So that's what Nikki Free was complaining about. That this is not appropriate for children, circling the butthole and explaining how to use butt plugs and all that stuff. So I kind of think
I would need. I'm curious. So is this in a high school library? Are these like in restricted sections, or what is the access to these books like? Because now
Some of them are in
because
grade
I thought before it was like a porn book. This seems like, whether we agree or disagree, it seems like it's a guide for sexual exploration for teenagers. Essentially, is what it looks like.
Butt plugs go a bit beyond that.
They do, but kids stick a lot of weird things in their bodies. A lot of girls that do a lot of fucking dumb things.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of true. Listen, I'm just recanting my own experiences. When I was younger, I used to want to fuck everything, right? Because I'm a dog, and then I ended up doing that with some of the girls that some of them we don't even know if they're girls. I'm not saying that they were like guys. I'm just saying that some of the animals. Sorry, that's inappropriate. I love women. Anyway, I was a dog, and I remember being younger, and I was like, I want to fuck something. I was tired of jerking off my hand, so I went and I cut like a hole in a pillow. It just didn't feel right. And so like I can't imagine. And you see like an American Pie movie make jokes about how guys fuck a pie, and like there are people who talk about putting a watermelon in the microwave, and I can never cut a hole small enough, for. No, but I don't know. So maybe that's part of it, is just like teaching you correctly what to put in your body so girls don't put weird shit in there. I don't know. So maybe that's what it is. I'm just trying to understand.
We shouldn't be giving children books explaining how to use butt plugs.
Probably not.
I generally probably agree.
Right.
But again, like I'm curious, like
that's just it. That's just it. It's like, hey, let's not have that book.
What is the access though?
Well, the article that I just read, I should have kept it up, said that this was like part of basically trying to groom children into an ideology, and I think that part, the intentionality. To me, I read this and I think that there are parts of it that are inappropriate, especially this butthole. Holy fuck! Sorry, I looked at it again. Holy fuck! Oh, Jesus. But they say, I'm so sorry, but they'll say things like they're using this to like push like an agenda to groom children, and that's not what it is. They're thinking like, oh, this is just a resource to teach kids how to like safely masturbate. I think it's inappropriate, but I don't think that we should label it some kind of grooming. I think we're going way too far with assuming that intentionality. I think it's just like trying to teach kids to have sexual resources so that they don't get sexually frustrated, because kids are disgusting and horny. So that's the issue I have with it. If you're just like, hey, I think this is inappropriate, but it's not an argument of whether it is or isn't inappropriate. It's an argument about like whether it's predatory, and it's not. I'm not linking it. I can't link it. I don't want YouTube to ban me. Okay, so shut up.
Right, because like again, if you tell me this is available to a second grader, that's a lot different than like. I'm just saying that's a lot different than like this is a high school book that like you have to be 18 and older to rent.
They actually did say this
for anal sex, with an encouragement to use a butt plug.
Nice.
Even more startling is the guide on how to sext for children, encouraging them to send photos that don't include your face, hide your birthmarks and scars, and edit out your piercings and tattoos.
The problem with that is like kids shouldn't be sending pictures of each other, but that sounds like, hey, if you're gonna sext, don't send any identifying information. Like I still disagree. You shouldn't be teaching kids that. But if the book says if you're sending pictures, don't send your face, any identifying scars, any tattoos or piercing that could be identifying. Also, by the way, assuming that they have tattoos and piercings suggests to me that those are 18 and older. No offense. That sounds like you're just trying. Oh, my camera is blurry. Sorry. That just sounds like you're trying to teach kids to sext safely. That doesn't sound the same as that sounds like protecting yourself, because that's good advice, because kids are going to send each other pictures anyway. It's not good, but if you're going to do it, you might be like, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, but if you are, don't show your face. Don't show any scars that people could identify with you with. Don't show any tattoos or piercings, because people could. That sounds like it's trying to help kids. Again, I can disagree with the subject matter while understanding that the intentionality is actually to protect children. Okay? It's great advice. Yeah, we live in a world where everything's on the internet. This is fantastic advice.
Books by Rupi Kaur, such as Homebody, Milk and Honey, and The Sun in Her Flowers.
Let me jump back.
There's another book that contains
Because
Hillsborough.
Okay, here we go. They explain where they were found and how their kids were accessing them.
Sure.
What was found was shocking, graphic.
Flamer by Mike Curato was found in Broward, Collier, Hillsborough, Marion, Seminole, and Volusia County schools. The camp the boys go to in the book has an island that the book says.
Okay, so they basically just outlined that it's in schools in Florida.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, you agree there's a difference between, like, this is like in a high school, you have to be like a junior or older to check out, versus this is in like the grade school library. These are two like pretty different things.
Some of them are in grade schools, yes. Like genderqueer, the reason it got so much attention is because it was in grade schools specifically. I think it was in like a 6th grade classroom or something. The teacher brought it in. I don't know. We cover.
You think or you know, and now you're saying a teacher brought it in. So that sounds like an irresponsible teacher, not an entire school that supports this. Now we're kind of getting all over the place now. So you're telling me that if that's what happened, because you don't even seem to have a fucking straight story, a teacher brought an inappropriate book into their classroom. That's inappropriate. That teacher maybe should get fired. I can see why you'd ban the book, but like that is if that book's not, now you're telling me that it wasn't even part of the school library, or you're all over the place. Like you don't even have a decent argument for your own thing. You should be educated on this more than anybody else. And it's like, oh well, a teacher brought this in. Oh well, that's not good. Is that the school though? Like I don't understand.
For all this stuff when it happens,
sure.
We have to pull it up right now. But like, look,
yeah.
Simply put, this is what conservatives have been complaining about. They're like, hey, like in Florida, they said if you're in kindergarten to 3rd grade, you should not have access to this stuff. They should not be teaching it. That's it. After that, you can do like whatever.
Yeah, but I feel from what I've looked into, it's not just you can't teach it. Like you can't even say you're gay. Like it's fucking wild.
Parents have a right to know about it.
But I guess that sounds reasonable. If it's just like you can't teach it, that sounds reasonable. But if you have like a gay kid in the class or something, like it should be okay for them to be able to express that. You know what I mean? Like that, where does the line go? And I think the bigger issue with that wasn't even that they were trying to ban stuff. The bigger issue of that, I think, was that they made it so that like any parent could sue regardless of validity, which would have put the state into like drastic financial constraints because they'd have to constantly be defending themselves. And like that was what was being argued against more than anything else. It wasn't like, oh, don't ban this. It was more like, okay, you can't make it so teachers can parents can sue us over anything because that's going to bankrupt the school, and we're not going to be able to afford that. I think that was the bigger issue, if I remember correctly.
In fact, teachers are still allowed to talk about identity and sexual orientation stuff, but not in a classroom setting. Meaning, a teacher could literally tell a student one-on-one if they asked, "Hey, what's that picture on your desk?" "Well, that's my husband," or whatever. And oh, okay, that wasn't banned. What was banned was a classroom curriculum setting of educating kids on these issues, and only kindergarten through 3rd grade. Though they are now expanding it to, I think, all through 8th grade or whatever.
I think it is important, the word children, because if you're 17 and tomorrow's your birthday, you're still a child legally.
Yeah, I guess it's like the thing that bothers me is that like conservatives will say things like we shouldn't teach this to children, and it's like that. I don't like some of these books would be incredibly inappropriate for like a 6-year-old. But for like an 18-year-old, I don't know, it'd probably be good to know some of this stuff.
Well,
right?
An 18-year-old's totally different.
I know, but that's
17-year-old,
including children. So like, for instance, like I'll fight
not
over...
in schools, man.
Wait, what, not in schools?
I don't think schools should have this stuff even for 17-year-olds.
There's a lot of stuff available at a library. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I think like a book showing how to use a butt plug is over the line.
Sure. And even if you do think that
stuff is fine.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's part of it, right?
I really disagree. Like, you're talking about kink, and kink goes beyond basic sex education.
Do you think that like toys for women should be discussed in books?
No.
Okay. They probably
for
should.
kids, you mean?
What do kids mean?
For 17 and under.
For like 17, 18-year-olds.
I think instruction manuals should not be in, you know what I mean? Like
I feel like fundamentally, I could see why they might have, I wouldn't even call it an instruction manual for how to masturbate for like young people. I mean, I'm uncomfortable with giving it to anybody under 18, but the problem is that 13-year-olds are masturbating. Not to get personal, but I know that there are people even younger than 13-year-old masturbating. All right, I've talked to people before. I don't want to get explicit. This is very that started masturbating at like 8 years old. Now I think that's disgusting, but at the end of the day, if you like, kids are gonna do what kids are going to do. So like maybe just try to guide them in the right direction. Now that's a conversation we really need to have. You know, what is too over the line? Is it okay to teach a kid that they should like, you know, or is it like, hey, listen, it's okay to like it's good to teach a kid like, okay, it's okay to masturbate. It's good to get that stress out, right? It's good for your prostate, guys. But like, what's too far? Butt plugs, way too far. But like telling kids that are older that are already sexting that you shouldn't send identifying information through a sext, like that's probably good education. I just feel like some of it's over the line, but fundamentally there's probably some good things to teach kids. Like you have to teach some kids sexual education. Like you just have to. Yeah, bro, I don't know what to tell you. I know that's disgusting. It's disgusting to me too. 8 is young, but there are more people than you think who start masturbating when they're like really young. You know, I know I started at like 13, but even then, 13 is still young. You know, it would be good to have like some education on that, especially with like just in general. I'm just saying. You know, something, I know maybe school's not the right place for it. I don't know. Maybe just have the parents do it. But like, are parents actually doing it? Because there are some people, especially more conservative leaning, where their entire idea of sexual health education is just abstinence and they don't do anything else. So it's like, you know, we might need to, engage in some form of harm reduction. So something, just something.
I think that the issue is that teenagers are engaging, and there's a lot of especially conservative parents that like to pretend that teenagers don't do anything sexual until they're 18, and that's just not the case, regardless of what they want to believe. Especially when half these conservatives get fucking pregnant at 16, 17, 18. Anyway, but there's a lot of people like to pretend that their kids aren't into anything sexual, blah blah blah. And then when it comes to children that are starting to explore and do these things, stupid things happen where people are putting dumb things in their bodies. They end up going to ERs, or worse, they don't tell their parents at all, and they have like these hugely complicated problems. It's probably not the most common thing in the world, but again, I think that for like a 17 and 18-year-old, like books on this available at a school library that's not like assigned as part of the curriculum. I think you can argue whether or not it's a big deal or not. There's probably good arguments on both sides, but it's way different than like an 8-year-old having access.
But that was part of the issue. The reason it comes up is because young kids did have access to these books, and that freaked people out.
Sure, if that is the case, sure. Yeah. I just don't know if I believe it.
Sure, but was their motivation to just be reasonable, be like, oh, this is an appropriate book, but like maybe parts of it are appropriate, or was it just like all? Because it all seems like it's all under the problem is it's like a broken clock is right twice a day, right? So like, were they like, hey, I understand the intentionality of this book is to educate young people on safe masturbation, but I think it's inappropriate, which I agree with. That's my perspective. And so we should maybe ban those books versus, oh, this is just part of a gender ideology. Because in the article I read, a huge part of it, a big factor in this book that I read was there's just a page on gender ideology. I don't give a fuck if the kids can have a gender ideology conversation, depending on how old they are. I don't really give a shit. That's different. So like you can't include, like if you're going to include the butt plug part, which makes sense, but then also the part of the page where it talks about gender versus sex, like it sounds to me like you're just worried your kid's gonna learn what a trans person is. You know what I mean? And you're not just trying to be reasonable.
That's the case, yeah. I don't know if I'm doing anything about it. But if it is, I agree. Like there should be an age-appropriate conversation around what's available to children.
Well,
right?
so the
kindergarten through 6th grade, like probably should have no access to any of this stuff. I think we agree with that, right?
Ron DeSantis' administration comes out and says kindergarten through 3rd grade, none of this stuff. The Democrats came out and lied and said it was don't say gay. Despite the fact that the bill barred people from also talking about straight marriage as well.
I believe the issue with that bill was that after it specified K through 3, I want to say in the very next line, it said an age-appropriate up to high school as well. I think there was a vague interpretation there. We can look up the actual bill itself, but I'm almost positive that it included up through high school as a vague line after that K through 3 thing. I'm almost positive because I remember we read the bill on stream.
But either way, it wasn't a don't say gay bill. You couldn't say straight either.
No, well, the issue...
You could not say straight.
I don't know if that was true. You couldn't say straight.
But it did not specify the word gay or anything. It just said you cannot talk about orientation or identity, which includes all of it.
Yeah, but the problem is you generally don't need to talk about an orientation if it's straight, because that's just what you assume, right?
Yeah.
I think that the main concern, the legal argument that I heard for the concern for the quote-unquote don't say gay bill was that bill created a private cause of action that any parent could sue or bring legal action to any school whatsoever, whatever they wanted to, if they felt like one of these things was being brought up in an inappropriate manner. And that might extend to just saying that like an author of a poem is gay. You wouldn't necessarily say somebody's straight because that's just assumed, right? It's like in a movie, if we see like a husband and a wife kissing, nobody asks a question, but when two guys are kissing, it's like, well, why are they gay, right? Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a different treatment for gay relationships versus straight ones.
Let's go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button?
He just skipped right over that. He didn't even respond to it. That's a good point. Like, yeah, you have to be a little more explicit because it's not normal. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not generally as normal for gay people to be like publicly gay or accepted to be gay. It should be more normalized. I'm not saying we need more gay people. Like, we got plenty of those. Okay, guys, we got way too many gays. No, I'm just kidding. But like, yeah, usually you have to have more of that explicit conversation because you're not running on default settings. You know what I mean? All right, you're overclocking your GPU. You shouldn't be putting stuff in that port. All right.
subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com so you can watch the uncensored portion of the show, which will be live at 10 p.m. over at timcast.com. We'll put it up on the front page. And if you're a member, you have the opportunity to submit questions and actually call into the show and ask those questions. So we will be taking calls from our Discord channel. But for now, let's read some of these super chats. Daniel Kuhn says, "Isn't Destiny a girl's name?"
True.
What?
I was like, okay, let me end the segment here with the super chats, but that super chat is so funny because it's just dumb. Like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you could say it's a girl's name, but it's just like an online gamer tag. All right, I used to call myself Valis online. Okay, it's just so funny when people dog on that. Look at his face. It's so. I want to listen a little bit. I'm sorry. It's not clever, but it's just funny. It's one of those things to me where like you make a joke and it's like kind of funny at first, and then like you make the joke again and you laugh a little bit, and then you make it a third time and you're like, okay, kind of over this joke. And then you make it a fourth time and you're like, I'm gonna fucking take my own life. And then a fifth time you start to chuckle again, and then by number 6 or 7, it's just a meme. And it's just so funny to me. I love it. I love it so much. That's what I like to do, you know? I used to do that back in the day with like bodybuilding memes, like, oh, sickening pissing, like Jason Genova. It's immature, but that was just my sense of humor back then. Dude, I'm fucking doo-dooing on this fucking. There we go. Just finished 16 heap. Suck it, bitch.
Where does Destiny come from? Is it just like a gamer tag?
Yeah, I was like 8 years old. I was just.
Oh,
It was before the game.
But yeah. Yes, unfortunately.
Did the game make you more popular?
Initially, it pissed me off because it kind of messed with my SEO, but I think I'm doing good now.
It's trending
so.
on.
Maybe it did. Maybe it did make it more popular. Hopefully they make a game called Papa Gut. That'll be pretty good.
On Twitter right now.
Yeah, it always is. Because the game is usually trending. And then if I do anything, people talk about me too, so it gets mixed up. I still get emails every now and then from people that are asking me, like, hey, can you reset the password of my Bungie account? And like, yeah, it's kind of dumb. But...
All right. Freedom Jeffrey, 1776 says, "Hi, Tim. How do I become an elite member?" You sign up at timcast.com.
Do you think somebody actually asked how to become an elite member? Or do you think that this was a poached question?
For the $100 tier, and that makes you an elite member. And then you get access to the elite chat room, and the people hanging out in the elite chat room are networking. That's the point. So hopefully, though, once we get our physical location set up, the 3rd floor will be like the actual clubhouse. And it will be basically like a hillbilly version of a social club that people in New York have. So like in New York, they have the $50,000 a year clubs, like ridiculously expensive, like the Soho House or whatever. We're going to do the redneck version.
Wait, you're going to have like an actual place in here where fans are coming in?
We have purchased a 3-story building in West Virginia that we are putting on the 1st floor, a coffee shop. It's currently in the planning phase.
Okay.
2nd floor is going to be gaming and hangout. And then the 3rd floor is the private club, which is going to be...
Damn, they're having a whole like neckbeard loser club? Where is this? Because I'm interested.
2nd floor is going to be building in West Virginia.
Wait, you're going to have like an actual place in here where fans are coming in?
We have purchased a 3-story building in West Virginia that we are putting on the 1st floor, a coffee shop. It's currently in the planning phase.
Okay.
2nd floor is going to be gaming and hangout. And then the 3rd floor is the private club, which is going to be $100 a month, substantially cheaper than your typical social club. So it's like the working class version of these things, so people can hang out with each other and collaborate. You know,
it's kind of cool,
like
actually.
clubs do.
Your own Equinox.
Cool. Is that what that is? Well, I mean, like in New York, I think the Soho House. Like,
I think that's kind of cool, bro. Not for nothing, but that's pretty cool. It's a bit ambitious, and I respect it. That's interesting. That's cool. God bless. Okay.
$50,000 a year to be a member.
Damn.
It's crazy. Yeah, like $4,000 something per month they pay. But then like there's free food, there's free drinks. You're hanging out with a bunch of rich people, so you're like, I got an idea for a business, and then someone connects you with someone else. That's power right there.
Hopefully it doesn't fail, because that sounds like if I was a rich person hanging out there and I had some fucking nerd that's rounded up $100 to come in there, I'd be like, oh my god, I might not want to show up anymore. You know, I'm not trying to be fucking rude or anything, but it sounds kind of cool. Sounds pretty cool. Okay.
People start businesses. All right, Wayback says, DeSantis put out a perfect statement in regards to the Trump indictment. He said he won't assist in the extradition and it's a political prosecution. He's won me back with that statement. Trump 2024, DeSantis 2028. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, maybe that's why he did it, to win people back. I don't really know. Anyway, I don't want to get into all these fucking things. I do all these questions. It was a good video. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot, guys. I learned a lot.
I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.